He imagines how amazing it would be if people could know the future, saying that if they knew the winning lottery numbers, they could become wealthy, and if they knew what would be on the next test, they could get good grades. Looking across the crosswalk, he thinks about how wonderful it would be if someone could really see the future like that. A boy and a long-haired girl stand near the crossing, both facing the pedestrian signal, as he glances down at the phone in his hand. Then the pedestrian light flips with a sharp pop, changing to the white walking figure. But his expression suddenly tightens as he realizes things are not that simple. Ahead, the long-haired girl is already moving past the front of a car, while he reflects that life does not go that smoothly. Stopping in place, he tries to process it, thinking that what he just saw was... He cuts himself off mid-thought and decides there is something more important right now. Seeing the girl from earlier still standing there, he feels immediate relief and thinks, thank goodness, she is still safe. The crossing signal switches again, and as he starts forward, all he can get out is a startled little, ah. Startled, he throws out a hand and shouts for her to wait. He lunges in from behind and grabs the long-haired girl around the chest and waist, yelling for her to wait as she stiffens in shock. Both of them freeze, flushed and wide-eyed, with only a stunned little sound escaping him while she blurts out a confused, "What?" Panicking, he jumps back with his hands up and hurriedly says, "Excuse me," explaining that he was trying to save her from an accident. Holding herself and blushing with suspicion, she asks what he means by an accident. Trying to sound confident, he says that soon a yellow car will come speeding through. Instead of believing him, she snaps back, calling him a pervert. Reeling from that, he thinks this makes no sense and wonders if she has never run into someone before. Looking at her downcast expression, he can only think that at least she did not get into an accident. As a car sweeps past in the foreground, she bitterly says that she only went out on an errand and this happened, calling it just her luck while he stands there watching. A car sweeps past in front of him, and he stares after it in silence. Then he realizes it was a yellow sports car. He introduces himself as Ito Arase and says he can see the future, noting with a faintly dazed thought that it was such a flashy color. He explains that he gained this mysterious power a little while ago, after nearly dying in an accident. Blushing as he thinks back on what just happened, he admits he really did grab her by accident, saying he had only gotten really nervous and never meant to grab her like that, while also thinking that if he had not done it, she would have been in danger. In his mind, the scene replays from above, with the girl near the crossing and the car rushing in below. Flustered and sweating, he tells himself that if he focuses only on having saved her life, then a slap is nothing. He wonders if helping people sometimes is what leads to this result, thinking that if he could freely see the future, he could always choose a better one. But he says he can only see a few minutes into the future, and even that is rare. Looking down with a heavy expression, he then thinks that he wants to die. A woman in a fitted sweater scolds him for talking like that at his age, and instead tells him to find her a man, while also saying he should stop trying to expand his dating pool with high school students. He introduces the woman as Kochi Ayako, describing her as a kind-hearted person who took him in when he had no one else, while she teasingly calls him a fool and tells him he needs to catch a good man while he still can. As he looks off to the side, he says that from now on he will be living alone with Ayako-san, but even as a high school boy, he admits he cannot feel excited about it. The reason becomes obvious when Ayako says she is suffering from yet another hangover, and he dryly remarks that with her like this, there is honestly no way to enjoy any of it. While facing him at the table, Ayako suddenly remembers something and tells him that after he finishes eating, she needs him to do something, and he simply asks what it is. What she needs is simple: his uniform has arrived and she asks him to go pick it up. Embarrassed, Ayako says that is true, but explains she wanted him to get used to the town, making it clear she definitely forgot to mention it when she sent him out that morning. Walking outside by himself, he thinks that after the slap incident and everything else, he really does not want to go out today. He explains that the daydreams he occasionally sees a few minutes into the future usually show him unpleasant things, as the image of a girl with long hair near a car lingers in his mind. He says he did not help out of any noble sense of justice, but because knowing someone would die and ignoring it would keep him awake at night, as he recalls his own shocked reaction. As he walks along, he admits to himself that what he did was purely for his own sake, and that someday, somewhere, when he remembers that moment, it is obvious he will regret it. Still heading down the path, he can only hope to spend peaceful, uneventful days at his new school when a sudden thought makes him stop and think to himself, wait a second. His eye widens, and he immediately realizes that wishing for calm school days sounds exactly like the kind of ominous line that raises a bad flag. Right then, two small children come rushing into view, one happily telling the other to try and catch him while the other calls for him to wait up, and the boy turns at the commotion. In the next instant, one of the kids slams into his leg and yelps in shock. The collision throws the child backward, and a cry escapes as his hand reaches out too late. From above the sloped walkway, he watches in alarm as the child tumbles away below the railing. As the children burst into tears, One loudly insists that it is not his fault and that this guy is the one to blame, while the boy can only stare in disbelief. Sweat running down his face, he stiffens as he realizes he has just seen another future vision. Surrounded by accusing little faces, with one child pointing at him and calling him the guy, he awkwardly raises both hands and thinks that this is definitely going to be blamed on him, and that everyone is absolutely going to pin it on him. As he turns at the noise, two little kids come running past, one telling the other to try and catch him while the other calls for him to wait up. Watching them, he gives a faint, uneasy smile and thinks this should be easy. In his vision, he sees himself smoothly reaching out and catching the boy's dropped toy before anything worse can happen. He quietly reflects that sometimes seeing the future can actually be convenient. Certain now that the boy will not drop his toy, he keeps walking when the children's startled cries suddenly ring out beside him. Then the toy slips free anyway, bouncing away with a sharp clatter as someone screams. He stops in shock as the children immediately panic, with one insisting it is not his fault, another apologizing and saying Big Sister was not paying attention, and a worried voice adding that it was something important his mom bought for him. A long-haired young woman rushes in and brightly tells them it is okay, promising that Big Sister will get it back right away. His eyes widen as he sees her at the railing and realizes what is happening, while one of the children calls for her to wait a minute. She glances back and asks if something is wrong, and as he hurries toward her, he blurts out in alarm that she is not seriously planning to jump in there. She cheerfully says yes and promises to go get it right away. Before he can stop her, the young woman dives over the railing into the water below, and someone watching can only marvel that it is incredible. He stands at the railing in stunned silence, staring down at where she jumped with the children beside him. As one child nervously asks if she is going to be okay, he tries to reassure them by saying she looks like she is probably a good swimmer and should be fine. That hope falls apart instantly when the woman flails in the water with a strained smile and calls for help, while he realizes in horror that she cannot swim. At the same time, the important toy and a cap go flying off again, and the kids blurt out that now there is a new problem. A huge splash erupts below the bridge as he jumps in after her. Moments later, both of them scramble back onto land on all fours, drenched and gasping as she coughs beside him. Shaken and dripping, he admits that he seriously thought he was going to die. The two children hurry over and anxiously ask if Big Brother and Big Sister are okay. The young woman gives a shaky wink and a thumbs up, insisting that Big Sis was amazing, while someone bluntly points out that she had been drowning the whole time. A child happily calls out that the item is here, and another voice excitedly agrees. Sitting there drenched, the young man looks on as she thanks them, and someone notes that even though she was drowning, she still managed to retrieve it while she is told to make sure she does not drop it again. As the children throw their hands up, the narration sums it up by saying that even so, she had only wanted to go pick up her uniform. With the woman smiling beside him, the young man can only think in disbelief about how it ended up like this. He suddenly turns, flustered, as she looks back at him with a puzzled little sound. One of the children says that, even if it is late to say it, they were really saved thanks to her, while another hurriedly says not to mention it. The young woman tilts her head and asks what is wrong. Sweating and visibly embarrassed, he awkwardly starts to answer that it is nothing, stumbling over his words. Staring straight ahead in her soaked clothes, she begins to say, "See," as the scene lingers on her drenched state. Tilting her head with question marks practically hanging in the air, she asks if he means her clothes, then gives him a small, puzzled glance as she waits for an answer. Red-faced and panicking, he blurts out for her not to look. Clutching her soaked blouse closed, she hurriedly insists that it is not what he thinks and that she does not usually wear such flashy clothes, while he can only ask what exactly she thinks he is worried about. As she gets even more flustered, she explains that she had no choice because this was all she had for today, then blurts out that she does not think she is wearing erotic underwear, while he throws up his hands and admits he was not thinking that far. Getting uncomfortably close, she lets out a drawn-out breath and asks if he arranged for those children to run into her so he could see her body, and he immediately denies it, asks why she would think that, and protests about why she is so close, while his overwhelmed reaction sums it up as being falsely accused twice in one day is too much. Before she can keep going, she suddenly scrunches up and sneezes hard. Seeing that, he offers her something to use, saying it is better than nothing and that she can return it another time. She gathers it to herself, then declares, well then, while he thinks there is no choice but to run away now before this gets any more complicated. She looks at him in silence, her wide eyes soft and unreadable. He bolts off, and, left behind, she thinks that after being helped by him, she probably did something bad, and that if she had thought about it properly, she would have known that was not possible. With a tear of regret at the corner of her eye, she thinks that, somehow, well, he reminds her of her brother. Holding his jacket around herself and smiling softly, she hopes they can meet again. The scene shifts to the outside of a house. At home, a woman asks how he got soaking wet just from going to pick up a uniform, saying that is what she would like to know too. As he stands there in wet clothes, he gloomily reflects that he got slapped in the morning and soaked at noon, then wonders if maybe he should go get a purification ritual. Gripping a bag in his hand, he admits he is worried about school life starting tomorrow. As the thought lingers that bad things keep happening one after another, he decides he will just go to sleep for now. The next day arrives at school, where students are already gathered in the classroom as the campus comes into view. Resting her chin on folded hands, Nanami shuts her eyes and mutters that she should have hit him one more time. Looking upset as she recalls yesterday, she thinks of that pervert and says she absolutely will not forgive him. Sitting at her desk in the classroom, Yuri notices her expression and asks what is wrong, calling her Nanami-chan. Nanami looks over in surprise, and the cheerful girl calls out to her by name and says she seems upset. Nanami immediately tells her to listen, blurting out that yesterday she was harassed by a pervert, and the girl reacts in shock, repeating that it was a pervert. Growing more heated, Nanami says it was the worst, angrily adding that he even hugged her in broad daylight. The girl stiffens and declares that kind of thing completely unforgivable. She then promises that if she finds him, she will definitely get him for Nanami, while Nanami smiles and says she is so reliable. Then, the girl seems to remember something and tells everyone to quiet down, saying that speaking of yesterday, at that moment, a teacher walks in carrying materials. Someone says it is Kirihara-sensei, and the class is told to take their seats. As the class settles, the cheerful girl says she is going back to her seat. With everyone sitting down, he thinks that it is finally quiet. Kirihara-sensei addresses the class and says that today she would like to introduce a transfer student. As she calls for the student to come in, his thoughts cut in that even if someone can see a few minutes into the future, life does not go that smoothly. He steps into the classroom and faces the students, reflecting that this future vision only brings trouble, while Nanami stares straight at him from her desk. Looking awkward and sweating slightly, he introduces himself as Ito Arase. The moment Nanami sees his face, she blushes with shock and outrage and realizes that it is that guy. He freezes when he recognizes her too, thinking that she is the girl he helped yesterday, and also the girl who slapped him, wondering why she is here, as Nanami rises from her seat. Kirihara-sensei notices Asagiri's reaction and asks what is wrong, then wonders if she already knows the transfer student, while he thinks there is no way they would end up at the same school and in the same class, and that the world really is small. Shooting him a cold glare, Nanami flatly says that no, she does not know this pervert, while someone immediately tells her to stop that. Kirihara-sensei pauses with a thoughtful hum, and it immediately makes him wonder what she is about to say. With a confident little smile, she gives off the feeling that she senses a romantic comedy coming, while he is left wondering what on earth she is talking about. As he stands at the front, Kirihara-sensei casually introduces him to the class as their transfer student, Ito Arase, and he can only stare blankly, still trying to process her strange mood. She goes on to explain that he has family circumstances and has been through a lot, then asks everyone to please get along with him. He lets out a sigh and thinks she really does not seem normal, while she happily reflects that she had a feeling from the moment she met him in the staff room this morning that a transfer student arriving at this timing would lead to a nice romantic comedy development. Then, as attention turns to where Ito will sit, she decides this is the perfect opportunity. Without hesitation, Kirihara-sensei brightly announces that they should change seats, leaving the class with a simple, baffled reaction of why. The next moment, Nanami and Ito end up seated next to each other, both stunned, and he immediately thinks that teacher definitely planned this. Sitting at his new desk, he can feel an intense glare coming from right beside him as Nanami fixes him with a sharp look. As he glances over and confirms her name is Asagiri, he realizes that, looking closely, she is beautiful and has a nice figure, noticing what he somehow missed yesterday. Asagiri sits beside him with her arms folded in a cold expression, and he admits that under normal circumstances, he would actually be happy to be sitting next to her. Even so, for the moment, all he can think about is how intense her staring is. Trying to break the tension, he asks if she could stop glaring at him, but she shoots back that he has some nerve after molesting her. He hurriedly protests that it was really just a misunderstanding, and she immediately fires back that there was no such thing as a misunderstanding when he suddenly grabbed her. Flustered, he explains that yesterday he was trying to save her from an accident, but even as he says it, he realizes how bad that sounds. In a deadpan mood, he thinks she is right to ask for a better excuse and wonders if there is any way to clear up this misunderstanding. Asagiri coldly says that claiming he could see a future where she would have an accident is ridiculous, then adds that she still has not forgiven him for that slap, while he gives up on making her believe him. He accepts it with a quiet sigh, thinking that being disliked from day one as a transfer student is rough, but whatever. After all, he tells himself, he is used to being alone. As the classroom settles, Kirihara-sensei announces that homeroom is over. As the students settle in, he thinks that even if he can see minutes into the future, it does not really make life any better. Looking worn out, he reflects that it has already been a disastrous morning. A cheerful boy turns to him with a smile and asks if he did something weird to earn a glare like that from Asagiri. The boy introduces himself as Masaoka Sasuke and says it is nice to meet him, while casually asking why Asagiri is glaring at him, making him wonder if Asagiri really is that famous. As Sasuke talks her up, he explains that Asagiri is considered a black-haired beauty, and that in a countryside high school like this, her very presence feels refreshing, while her cool, unapproachable personality has earned her plenty of fans. Caught off guard, he nervously thinks there is no way he can say Asagiri is glaring at him because of his future prediction, and only gives a vague reply. He quickly makes up a safer explanation, saying that he tripped and accidentally grabbed Asagiri when she was in front of him. Hearing that, Sosuke winces and says that is seriously unlucky, adding that it is no wonder Asagiri is acting that way. Then, from nearby, a hesitant girl speaks up and asks if she could have a moment, making both boys look over in surprise. The girl faces him with a bright smile, and he is stunned to realize she is the same girl who jumped into the river and nearly drowned yesterday. The moment he hears her call out, "Kurase," Sasuke jolts with a bright red face and blurts out her name in shock, while he turns to look, caught off guard. In his excitement, Sosuke can hardly keep calm as he gushes that Kurase is counted among the school's top beauties right alongside Asagiri, while she stands there with a composed, elegant smile. Kurase politely says she does not need anything from Sasaoka-kun, and explains that she actually came to speak with him instead, leaving both boys staring at her. Still stunned, he listens as she warmly thanks Ito-kun for yesterday, says she never thought they would meet again, and introduces herself as Kurase Nanami, saying it is nice to meet him. Sosuke immediately grabs him in disbelief and excitedly asks if he knows Kurase too, and what is going on, while he nervously realizes this is another problem carried over from yesterday. Kurase quickly calls out to Sasaoka-kun and firmly says he is right, as if trying to get ahead of a misunderstanding. With flustered determination, Kurase blurts out that even if Ito-kun might have seen her slightly revealing underwear, the two of them do not have any kind of relationship. For a beat, the whole situation freezes, and all Sasuke can manage is a baffled little, "Huh." Sasuke explodes and demands to know what happened with this underwear incident, while he desperately tries to stop Kurase from blurting something like that out loud and stammers that it is not what it sounds like. Then Kurase leans in and, with complete seriousness, asks if he really saw Nanami's underwear, leaving both boys frozen as they stare back at her. Before Kurase can finish explaining that he saw her underwear only because of what happened, another girl, Yuri-chan, cuts in and coldly sums him up as nothing but a pervert, making Kurase call out to her in alarm. Yuri-chan glares with obvious disgust and flatly declares that he is the worst. As the accusation hangs in the air, Yuri-chan awkwardly tells Nanami to go back to her seat because they have no idea what that pervert might do again, while both boys look over stunned. He grips his head with a strange smile, and can only think that this has become impossible to clear up as a misunderstanding. Later, as school ends, Arase calls out from the classroom door and asks if he wants to walk home together, while he is still reeling inside over how things turned out like this. On the way home, Arase remarks that it was a long day, and he bitterly agrees, thinking it was a rough first day as a transfer student. He reflects that things only got more exhausting after that, especially once the teacher seated him next to Asagiri and his classmates immediately started buzzing that Ito did not need textbooks yet because he already shared a desk with Asagiri. Walking beside him, Arase excitedly says it is amazing that he has already gotten close with two of the top beauties before even transferring, but he shuts that down at once, insisting he does not know them and asking what is supposedly so great about the Asagiri situation. Arase keeps enthusiastically saying it is great that he gets to interact with girls, and even if the Kurase incident was an accident, it is still great, while he hurriedly insists he already explained that to Kurase and begs him not to get so excited because it is scary. He says all he wants is to clear up Asagiri's misunderstanding quickly, and Arase advises that he just needs to properly explain and apologize for touching her. He grimaces with a bead of sweat and says not to make it sound so simple. As they walk along the rural road, he suddenly freezes and blurts out in panic, asking why things turned out like this. He stands there stiffly, visibly shaken, as if the thought alone has stopped him in his tracks. Then he jolts in horror, thinking he just saw a vision of himself falling into a rice field, and urgently asks what that was. Arase looks at him in confusion when he suddenly calls out to Sosuke and asks if there is a rice field up ahead. Seeing the road stretching forward with fields beside it, Arase says that if they keep going straight, there is, but he is cut off when Sosuke immediately shouts that they should change routes, leaving Arase going, "Hey." Meanwhile, Yuri-chan shuts her eyes and coldly declares that he even laid hands on Nanami, and she says she absolutely will not forgive that molester. Beside her, Nanami timidly tries to explain to Yuri-chan that she is being deceived, saying Ito-kun actually helped her. Yuri-chan only gives a doubtful hum and repeats that he is just a pervert. In Nanami's memory, she insists that when Ito-kun helped her yesterday, he was kind, while Yuri-chan twists it by saying he only acted nice to lower her guard so he could see her underwear, leaving Nanami to react with a small, uncertain, really. As they walk, one girl hesitates and suggests that maybe they should properly hear Ito-kun's side of the story, but Yuri-chan immediately pushes back, asking why they should listen to his excuses. Nanami suddenly notices something and softly calls for attention, telling Yuri-chan to look. Stopping by a crosswalk, Nanami points it out and says this is where he molested her. Yuri-chan asks if she means here, and Nanami confirms it, explaining that he suddenly hugged her from behind. Nanami wonders aloud why Ito-kun would do something like that, while Yuri-chan dismissively says who knows what goes through a molester's mind, and Nanami recalls that he said something about an accident, something about a yellow car. Thinking back on it, Nanami quietly repeats, a yellow car. Yuri-chan says that reminds her of something, then mentions that her dad was talking about an accident there yesterday, and asks if Nanami's dad is a detective too, getting an eager yes in reply. She goes on to say that apparently some flashy yellow sports car crashed into a utility pole because it was going too fast. Hearing that, Yuri-chan freezes and lets out a startled little huh. As realization begins to set in, she stares ahead and wonders what that means. As the possibility hits her, Nanami blushes and thinks that if everything he said was true, then maybe Ito-kun really had been trying to save her from that car. But even while considering it, she tries to tell herself it must be nothing more than a coincidence, and wonders if he only happened to help her because of that car. In her mind, she recalls that if he had not been there, he would not have been able to pull her out of the way in time. The image of herself standing right in front of the oncoming car makes the danger suddenly feel very real. Arase abruptly turns around, and another girl calls out, asking what is wrong with him. Nanami stares ahead in shock, and when someone asks what she is looking at, she can only keep watching silently. Down the road, Ito-kun is walking along with a light-haired boy heading straight toward them. Seeing the girls, Ito-kun awkwardly reacts with a hesitant, confused little greeting. Arase faces him and, with the others watching, repeats his own words back to him by asking if this is really just a coincidence. The next thing shown is all four of them seated together at a table, as the girls and the two boys prepare to talk things out face to face. Sitting stiffly at the table, Ito-kun looks troubled and inwardly wonders how things ended up like this. As the drinks lightly clink on the table, he reflects that he only wanted to change the future where he fell into the rice field, and that along the way he happened to meet Asagiri, Kurase, and the others. In the earlier moment, Yuri-chan had eagerly suggested that Kurase, Yuri, and the rest all head home together or maybe grab some tea, then cheerfully declared that she would let Arase treat them, leaving him thrown off. Yuri-chan immediately brightened and urged them to go, while someone beside her called out to Nanami in surprise. Nanami then looked at Arase and reminded him that he had wanted to ask something, though he only clicked his tongue hesitantly. Yuri-chan suddenly leaned in and firmly insisted that if he was treating them, then it had better be something sweet. Back in the present, the light-haired boy finally tells them to say something already, while Ito-kun sits there sweating and thinking about how awkward the situation has become. With Nanami and Yuri-chan seated across from them, the light-haired boy presses Arase, saying this is his chance to apologize to Asagiri, but Arase hesitates and mutters that still, even so. Arase's eye sharpens as he admits that he really does want to clear up the misunderstanding with Asagiri. But before anything else, he blurts out the question on his mind and asks why they had to come to this cafe. Asagiri calmly says that she loves this place and that the manager is a nice person too. Hearing that, Arase lowers his gaze and admits that that only makes it even worse. He thinks that apologizing here at this cafe is exactly what he did not want, and then reveals why. The answer is the woman running the cafe, whose sweet smirk makes him immediately realize in shock that it is her. He explains that Ayako-san runs this cafe by herself, and that the first floor of the house he lives in is this very cafe. Trying to move things along, Ito-kun awkwardly asks Yuri-chan if she is not going to eat. Yuri-chan instantly perks up at the sight of the desserts and says she will have some, admiring how delicious they look. A spoon goes in and she takes a bite. She smiles with her eyes shut and happily hums in delight as she enjoys it. While Yuri-chan praises it as really delicious, Ito-kun buries his face behind folded hands and inwardly thinks he should just say it already. Hiding his face behind folded hands, Ito-kun thinks that Yuri-chan really is cute, and that just being around her makes the air feel purified. Nanami stares ahead with a flat, unreadable look, clearly catching that reaction. She immediately tells him to stop staring at Nanami and bluntly calls him a pervert, while he fires back that he already told her he is not a pervert, leaving a confused "huh" hanging in the air. With a strained smile, Ito-kun shoots back that she is the one who hugged him, so she has no right to talk. He then admits to himself that she always has a comeback for everything he says, and that keeping up this back and forth is pointless. Looking down, he decides that if their relationship gets any worse, school life will only become more annoying, and that is not what he wants. Nearby, Ayako-san blushes awkwardly, and he notes that being seen like this by the cafe manager is embarrassing, but it cannot be helped. Then he suddenly calls out to Asagiri, and she jolts in shock, wide-eyed, only managing a stunned, shaky what. And the next instant, he bows deeply from his seat and blurts out a loud apology, leaving Asagiri staring in complete surprise. Still bent forward, he sincerely tells Asagiri that he apologizes for what happened yesterday, and that he truly means it. Leaning in seriously, Ito-kun says there is one thing he wants to ask her. Asagiri cuts straight to the point and asks why he groped her yesterday. He insists that is not what happened and says he was trying to save her from an accident, but she immediately calls him a liar and points out that there was not even a car passing by at the time. With her arms folded, Asagiri explains that yesterday she heard a yellow car had gotten into an accident nearby, then presses him on how he knew a yellow car was coming. Bent forward and sweating, Ito-kun realizes in a panic that the crash really did happen and desperately wonders how he is supposed to explain this. Then Nanami steps in, asks if it was a yellow car, and calmly says he saw it too, adding that it was speeding all over the place. Grabbing onto that opening at once, Ito-kun blurts out that, yeah, he saw it even before meeting Asagiri, and that because it was driving so fast, he thought it would be dangerous if it came by while someone was crossing the road, while inwardly praising Kusuke for the save. Asagiri stares at him in silence, and the awkward mood practically says that excuse might have been a little too desperate. After a long sigh, she lowers her head onto her hand and says, well then. Asagiri finally says she will let it slide for now, leaving Ito-kun standing there stunned. Asagiri falls silent and thinks that maybe he really did manage to settle it, and that from tomorrow on, she might finally have some peace, but then she calmly adds that he should know one thing first. Without wavering, she tells him she still has not fully believed what he said, and Ito-kun can only blurt out a stunned response. Sweating, Ito-kun stares back and asks why. Asagiri explains that he never gave her a convincing answer, and on top of that, the fact that he hugged her is undeniable. Sitting with her arms crossed, she declares that she will judge for herself whether he is telling the truth or whether he is just a pervert. With a sharp look, she warns him to be careful not to reveal his true colors. As her hand moves into view, Ito-kun realizes what that means. He freezes in shock as it hits him that the misunderstanding has not been cleared up at all. Then Asagiri adds that he will also treat her to this cafe's parfait 10 times, and only then will she forgive him for hugging her, leaving him reeling at the number. Wearing a faint smile, she asks if he really thought apologizing once would be enough, and teasingly says her body is not that cheap, while his panicked mind screams for her to stop saying things that could be taken the wrong way. As Ito-kun and Asagiri look over, someone lets out a pleased little laugh and warmly says that the two of them really are something. Smiling brightly with her eyes closed, she says it looks like they made up, and that is great. Ito-kun quickly tries to stop her, saying she should not say that to people who are already on good terms, while another voice calls out to Nanami with a sharp hey. With an easy grin and his hands behind his head, Arase says they can just call it resolved for now. Nanami happily reintroduces herself, saying it is nice to meet him again, Arase, and nice to meet him too, while Ito-kun can only stammer out an awkward response. Even though there is still some anxiety, Arase casually asks where Ito-kun lives, and Ito-kun points out that it is right nearby, making the others react in surprise. As one woman heads out, the narration says that for now, a peaceful school life begins, or does it? Outside, Nanami stretches with a cheerful hum and says they should head home, and Asagiri simply agrees. Arase offers to walk them back, but Asagiri flatly refuses, saying there is no need. With her face darkening in suspicion, Asagiri says that still to think this cafe is that guy's house, while Nanami remarks that it is such a surprise, and Arase is left hanging back in the distance. Asagiri walks away thinking that, since she might run into him again, it will be hard to come back to this cafe even though it was her favorite spot. Then a voice suddenly calls after them, telling them to wait a minute. The cafe manager hurries over with a bright smile, saying she is glad she made it in time. Asagiri wonders if they forgot something, but the manager says no and explains that she only came to thank them, while Ito-kun recalls that she is apparently that guy's guardian. Looking a little bashful, the manager thanks them for becoming friends with him and says she never expected him to bring friends on his first day at a new school. Ito-kun inwardly insists that he did not really mean to become friends with him, but the manager explains that the boy has a complicated family situation and, while he has a bit of an attitude, asks them to please keep being kind to him if possible. Nanami beams and says she would love to get along with him too, and Ito-kun, flustered, quickly adds that of course he would also like to get along with him. Hearing Nanami say that, Asagiri blushes and awkwardly thinks that if Nanami is saying it, then she has no choice but to go along with it, at least a little. The manager cheerfully asks whether it is really okay to leave the cafe open while she is alone, and whether he has helped out often since moving here, then laughs it off by saying it is fine because she has left it to that boy for now. The answer comes back at once that no, this is his first time, leaving Asagiri, Nanami, and Ito-kun staring in surprise. Back at the cafe, Arase suddenly calls out for Ayako-san to hurry back, while the narration notes that he may have been struggling a lot too. Then the story shifts to Arase Ito, with the narration revealing that he can see the future. Walking alone down the street with his bag over his shoulder, he explains that these visions come at irregular times and only show him a few minutes ahead. Looking at his phone and then a clock reading 8032, he sums it up simply. Since life is not conveniently designed, he realizes with a tense look that he is completely late. He immediately protests that it was not his fault for oversleeping because Ayako-san should have woken him up, but she coolly replies that she does not wake sleeping guys because that is her policy, leaving him yelling why not. After that, he resigns himself and thinks that at this point there is no reason to rush, so he might as well take his time getting there. As he keeps walking, he grumbles that if only his future visions would show him something useful like this in advance. Grabbing his head in frustration, he calls his precognition a completely unhelpful ability, when suddenly something makes him freeze. Right in front of him, two boys corner a short-haired girl and casually ask where she is going, telling her to skip school and come play with them. The girl bluntly tells them to get lost, saying there is no way she would hang out with the likes of them. One of the boys smirks and says she has got some guts, then warns that she should be careful not to get too cocky for her own good. Just then, Arase appears in front of them, and both sides react with startled confusion. The boy immediately snaps at him, demanding to know what he is staring at. Caught off guard, Arase hesitates, while the other boy tells him not to stare if he has got no business with them. Before Arase can do anything, the two boys start dragging the girl away as she struggles and yells for them to let her go, while one of them says they should get moving already. Arase breaks into a cold sweat and curses under his breath, realizing this is another troublesome vision. As the scene from his precognition repeats, he hears the boys ask the girl where she is going, and he suddenly realizes this is the exact same place from that vision. Seeing the spot right in front of him, Arase recognizes the moment when they tell her to skip school and come play with them. He thinks that this has nothing to do with him, then wavers, apologizing to the girl in his mind before reasoning that maybe the best move is to ignore it as if he never saw anything, even as he worries that if he leaves it alone, things may happen exactly as he saw. Even while telling himself it does not matter to him, Arase sees one of the boys grab the girl, and that thought stops him cold. He suddenly steps in and calls out, acting like he has just arrived to meet her, saying hey and apologizing for keeping her waiting. Forcing a smile and raising a hand, he blurts out that they were supposed to skip school and go on a date today, then urges her to get going while screaming inside over what on earth he is saying. The two boys stare at him in confusion, one asking what is wrong with him and the other wondering if he is her boyfriend or something, while Arase can only fumble awkwardly and curse himself for saying date. Panicking behind the smile, he realizes he does not even know this girl's name and can only let out a strained little sound. The girl instantly plays along, grabs his hand, and snaps that he is way too late because those weird guys started bothering her. Blushing hard, Arase stammers in confusion, but then he hurriedly agrees and tells her to come on, saying they should go. The two boys shout after them to wait and hurry up, clearly thrown off as the pair starts moving away. Looking back with a bright smile, the girl pulls him along by the hand and tells him to run. After they make it all the way to an underpass, the girl says they should be safe now. Catching his breath in the underpass, Arase admits that he is exhausted and says he did not expect to suddenly start running. The girl turns back toward him and casually apologizes for it. With a warm, blushing smile, she still tells him thank you. Sitting beside him, she then asks why he helped her, and Arase can only trail off with an uncertain reply. As they sit there together, she suggests there might have been a reason for it. She bluntly asks if he thought he might get something in return for saving her, and Arase jerks around in total shock. Flustered and red-faced, he starts to deny it, but she calmly cuts in and tells him that it is okay. Then, placing a hand on his leg, she says that as thanks for saving her. She leans in with a teasing smile and tells him to do it with her once. Arase freezes on the spot, staring at her in speechless disbelief as his face turns even redder. Still bright red, Arase sits frozen while the girl leans in close with a mischievous grin, and he realizes in a rush that she is just messing with him. As the tension breaks, she laughs and says she was only joking, while Arase desperately tells himself he was not taking her seriously anyway. Flustered but trying to recover, Arase suddenly announces that they should get going, only to hesitate as he wonders where exactly they are supposed to go. Turning back with a playful smile and her hands behind her, the girl tells him they are skipping school today and reminds him that they have a date. With her cheeks lightly flushed, she beams at him and gently asks if that is okay. Arase is left reeling, thinking that what happened before was only to get them out of that situation, while he blurts out whether they really are going on a date and admits he has never even done this before. She casually tells him to come on already, adds that her name is Sana Fujibayashi, and he introduces himself as Arase Itu. While Arase is stunned that this is his first ever date, Sana looks ahead and says there is nothing around here, so they should take the train to the next town. Later, as they walk together through town, Sana cheerfully says she has not eaten anything since morning and suggests they grab a crepe, asking if a crepe counts as a meal. Holding a crepe piled high with whipped cream, she happily says she also wanted to try the new drink, then takes a sip and lights up over how good it is, while Arase watches quietly, thinking she is so sweet and then immediately panicking over the thought, as she murmurs that it is really good. As they continue their outing, Sana says she wants to buy some new clothes too and asks Arase to come with her. Standing in front of a clothing display with shopping bags in both hands, Arase asks in surprise if they are still shopping, and Sana answers from off to the side that of course they are, telling him to come on. As they walk along together, Sana spots a Purikura photo booth and excitedly says they should take a picture to remember the day. Afterward, Sana smiles with satisfaction and says that was fun, while Arase, sweating and worn out, wonders to himself if dates are always this exhausting. A little later, Sana asks Arase what time it is and whether they should start heading back soon, and Arase, still carrying all the bags, agrees but asks what they are supposed to do about all this stuff. Arase looks over in disbelief when Sana calmly says she will call a cab and tells him not to worry, and he can only think that she is casually calling a taxi. From behind, Sana explains that there is a taxi stand nearby and that taking one will be quicker, while Arase notes to himself that she has been spending money without hesitation and starts wondering if she might be a rich girl. While they wait outside, Sana suddenly asks Arase what year he is in, and he answers that he is a second year. Sana turns to him in surprise and says that means they are the same age, admitting she did not recognize him and thought he was a new student. Arase explains that he only transferred in last week, and Sana immediately realizes that he is Arase, the transfer student everyone has been talking about, bringing up the rumor surrounding him. Hearing that, Arase looks off to the side and quietly says that explains it. With a faint smile, Sana tells Arase that if he had known about her, he probably would not have spoken to her. Arase goes quiet, staring ahead as her words sink in. Then Sana suddenly brightens, points it out, and says there is a taxi over there, while Arase wonders what she meant by that. As the cab pulls up, Sana tells Arase to put the bags in the car, and he awkwardly agrees. Seated together inside, Sana casually tells him that if he sees her at school, he should feel free to say hi. Leaning in close with a teasing smile, she quietly adds that if he ever asks, she will help him graduate from being a virgin. The door slams as Sana laughs and says goodbye, while Arase erupts in shock and yells that he is never talking to her again. Left standing there, Arase is overwhelmed, wondering how she knew, whether she is used to this kind of thing, and whether he even needed to step in and help her in the first place. Blushing hard and still stunned, he can only think that today has been way too intense. In the end, all Arase can do is sum it up as one seriously heavy day. As the taxi pulls away, Sana is left standing by herself, her teasing smile gone as she quietly looks off into the distance. Remembering the photo they took together, Sana walks on with a small smile and admits to herself that Arase had actually been pretty fun to tease, and she still laughs when she thinks about it. Even so, she softly adds that he was a good guy. Looking up as she heads home, Sana wonders if she will see him again at school. The next day at school, Arase is suddenly asked what he was doing yesterday. A blonde classmate follows up by asking if he skipped school, stopping Arase in the hallway. When the classmate pushes further and asks if he was hanging out with a girl, Arase jolts in visible panic. Flustered and sweating, Arase hesitantly admits that, well, he did end up doing that. Images of yesterday flood back to him, and he finds himself thinking about spending the day with Fujibayashi. The blonde boy reacts in surprise, but Arase quickly covers for himself, saying he was just sleeping at home and deciding that if Kusuke heard the truth, it would only cause unnecessary trouble, so it is better to stay quiet about it. As they walk through the hall, the blonde classmate says that stuff like that cliched manga setup could never happen, wondering if Arase could just happen to run into a girl around a corner by accident in some fate-like meeting. The very next moment, he slams straight into someone with a loud thud and squeezes his eyes shut in pain. Arase looks over with a nervous sweat drop and asks if he is okay, while the blonde boy groans out a small ow from where he is bent over. Still wincing and rubbing himself, the blonde classmate starts to complain that whoever it was should watch where they are going. But when he looks up and sees the girl in front of him, his attitude vanishes at once, and under her cold stare and sharp click of annoyance, he lets out a frightened little shriek. Both the girl and Arase freeze in surprise, with her starting to say wait, while Arase can only get out an awkward ah. Then she suddenly turns away and rushes off, and Arase blurts out asking, "Ete, Fujibayashi?" As they watch her leave, the blonde classmate says he is not sure why, but she ran off, then adds in surprise that Arase actually managed to make Fujibayashi leave. He goes on to explain that Sana Fujibayashi has all kinds of rumors around her, including one saying she supposedly has a dangerous delinquent boyfriend from Higashi High, and warns that if she sets her sights on someone, who knows what will happen. Hearing that, Arase wonders if any of it is even true, thinking she did not seem like that kind of person, while the blonde boy adds that Higashi High is where the guys who hit on Fujibayashi yesterday were from. The blonde boy says he cannot tell whether the rumor is legit or not, but adds that everyone says it is. Arase stays silent as the blonde classmate goes on, saying people claim Fujibayashi is apparently into taking guys' first times. A vivid fantasy flashes through his head of Fujibayashi leaning in close and sweetly telling him that if he ever asked, she would help him graduate from being a virgin. The blonde boy excitedly declares that he would gladly offer up his first time, and Arase immediately points out that he was just shaking in fear earlier, while the thought lingers in his mind of whether that rumor could really be true. Reaching the classroom, Arase suddenly calls out as his attention shifts inside and he spots Asagiri there. Asagiri stands with her arms crossed and sharply asks why he skipped school yesterday, then notices the blonde boy too and remarks, "Asagiri, you too?" Arase, feeling that the hostility she once aimed at him is gone, and sensing some other kind of gaze instead, answers that he just was not feeling well, so he stayed home. As he turns back, Asagiri says she does not believe that is true. Sitting down, Arase asks why she is so curious about why he skipped. Asagiri quickly fires back that it is not like that, insisting that his not being there made everything harder for her, and Arase can only ask what she is talking about. Realizing what she meant, Arase breaks into a sweat as the words committee work hit him hard. Asagiri says that because he was absent, she had to handle all the health committee tasks alone, and when he protests that he never agreed to that, she bluntly says it was decided yesterday during the committee assignments. She explains that she volunteered to be the girls' health committee representative, but it took forever to choose a boy. While she adds that the teacher simply decided for them, another girl cheekily wonders if this is some kind of romantic setup, and Arase can only think that that teacher has some nerve. Asagiri continues that his absence made things worse because she had to cover extra areas in his place, and the committee's first duty was checking and restocking hygiene supplies around the school. Leaning right into his face and pointing at him, she declares that after school today, he is doing all the committee work by himself. Arase stiffly asks if that means he just needs to make the rounds, and with her arms folded, Asagiri says that is only part of it. She then reveals that she also took on a special task just for him, leaving Arase sitting there listening. The next destination is shown to be the nurse's office. Sitting there alone, Arase mutters in frustration that Asagiri is such a jerk. Arase realizes that the special task Asagiri mentioned is watching over the nurse's office until the school nurse gets back from her errand. He complains to himself that this is not really health committee work, then grudgingly admits Asagiri volunteered him for it because he had skipped while everyone else was working, and he bitterly calls it overkill. Slumped over the desk with his head down, Arase groans that nobody is coming anyway and wonders why he even has to bother. As time drags on in the empty room, he can only think that he just wants to go home. Then someone suddenly shouts to ask if he is okay, and Arase turns toward the voice as he catches sight of what looks like a girl collapsed on the gym floor. Startled, he jolts upright and blurts out that it is like a precognitive vision. Even while admitting he was just bored, Arase quickly wonders if she is from the basketball team or something, since a girl seems to have collapsed. A moment later, someone rushes in with an "excuse me" as they announce they are coming in. A short-haired girl in gym clothes appears at the doorway looking puzzled, and she says the teacher is not here. Arase asks if she is from the health committee, and when she says yes but explains that the teacher is out, he simply acknowledges it with an okay. The girl explains that she did not really need the teacher anyway, because she ran out of sports tape during practice. She adds that whenever that happens, they always give her some, then asks if he could let the teacher know later, and starts to say that if that is the case. As she hops up onto a seat and starts wrapping her bare foot and ankle herself, Arase watches and thinks her taping looks pretty sloppy. Looking over at her, he quietly decides this does not seem right, and asks if that is really okay, already thinking they should probably start over. From a distance, thinking that this is painful to watch, he awkwardly asks if she wants him to help her, and she reacts in surprise. Brightening immediately, she leans toward him and happily says that if that is the case, then yes, please. Arase freezes up, flustered and blushing, as he panics to himself that he has made a mistake and wonders if this means he actually has to touch a girl, while she cheerfully admits she is really bad at this and thanks him for helping. Gathering himself, he politely says pardon me, and as he starts fixing the tape around her ankle, he asks how this is. The girl beams that it is amazing and thanks him, while Arase, still embarrassed, quietly tells her she is welcome. She then asks if he sprained his ankle or something, and Arase introduces himself as Bakimoto from Class 1 of the Health Committee before adding that she does not have to be so formal with him. Smiling warmly and pointing at her cheeks, the girl asks if he is the transfer student, then reassures him that they are the same age, so it is fine. When she asks for his name again, he tells her it is Arase Itu, and she immediately replies that she has got it, calling him Arase-kun. She introduces herself as Takimoto Suika and says it is nice to meet him, and though caught off guard, he says the same back as they shake hands. She says she needs to get back to practice, and when he starts to warn her not to push herself, she cuts in and insists that since he taped her properly, she will be okay. With a bright wave and a closed-eye smile, she thanks him again before heading out. Left alone in the room, Arase just sits there stunned, staring ahead in complete silence. Then the energy drains out of him as he slumps in his chair and thinks that now he is bored again. As he reflects on the encounter, he mutters to himself that she is from the basketball team. A tense thought crosses his mind, and he wonders if the girl from his vision could have been Takimoto-san. Even so, as he pictures her injured leg, he questions whether practice is really possible in that condition. Just as Arase worries that he should have stopped her after all, someone in a coat rushes in, thanks Situ-kun for helping with her ankle, and apologizes that she has to leave right away. A moment later, the scene shifts outside to the gym building. Arase heads over anyway, thinking that the basketball team is in there, but since he is late and she might already be gone, he wonders what he is even supposed to do now. Looking at the players on the court, he focuses on Takimoto-san's leg and realizes it seems completely fine. Then he remembers that Takimoto-san's injury had been on her left leg, while in the vision it had been the right, and he starts to think that maybe it was someone else after all. Suddenly, a sharp cry cuts through the gym and a girl shouts for help, asking if someone is okay while calling out, "Hey!" On the floor, Suika is shown collapsed in pain as someone cries out her name. Arase turns in shock, sees Suika down on the court, and realizes with dread that he knew it. Frozen in place, he understands that the girl from his premonition was Takimoto-san. He gulps hard and thinks that if only he had noticed sooner, he could have stopped her. Near the gym wall, several girls gather around Suika on the floor as one of them anxiously calls out, asking if she is okay. Arase steps forward in shock, and someone notices him and calls him over as Arase-kun. He approaches the group and asks what happened while Suika sits on the floor and the others look on. But when Arase sees her up close, he is thrown off because, unexpectedly, she looks quite fine, leaving him able to only react awkwardly in confusion. Looking at Suika, he recalls that in his vision she had seemed far more heartbroken and in pain, and he hesitantly says it sounded like she had taken a hard fall. Suika says maybe that was the case and explains that she just lost her balance, while Arase nervously asks if her feet are okay and wonders if the future has changed. Suika insists that she is fine and says her ankle only feels a little uncomfortable, while another girl warns that it would be better not to push herself too much after this. Another teammate urges Suika to go to the infirmary, but Suika keeps insisting she is fine, and Arase immediately points out that she just said it felt uncomfortable. Focusing on her leg, Arase states that she has sprained her left ankle too, and Suika can only let out a small, uneasy sound. Suika suddenly points at him in realization and blurts out that this is why he is here. One of the girls brightly asks whether he can take care of Suika until they reach the infirmary, then teasingly suggests that he carry her on his back. Arase is caught off guard and stammers out why she would ask him, while the girl explains that only girls are here right now. She adds that Arase-kun is a health committee member anyway and points out that he rushed over because he was worried about Suika, leaving him looking even more put on the spot. Hearing that, Suika blushes hard, and the girl immediately declares that this makes him the perfect man for the job. As the situation goes far beyond what he expected, Arase can only think in disbelief about how on earth it ended up like this. The next thing he knows, he is carrying Suika on his back through the hallway while the scene turns noisy around them, and he is left internally shouting over how this happened. Someone tries to tell him that Suika can walk now and that he can put her down, but Arase flatly refuses. He says that as she forces herself to walk, her foot could end up even more injured, while another voice hesitantly wonders whether Suika might be a little too heavy for him. Suika looks flustered and insists that she already said she is okay. As they continue down the hall, Suika apologizes for earlier, saying she is sorry things got awkward and that she suddenly barged into another club's activity, then adds that she is sorry for that too. Suika quickly tells him that Arase-kun did nothing wrong, then says she is the one making him carry her on his back and asks if he hates it. As he keeps walking with her on his back, Arase quietly repeats Suika's name and says it does not feel unfeminine at all. With her face close to his, Suika explains that even the boys in her class treat her like just another fellow boy. After a brief silence, Arase simply asks if that is so. Looking at him softly, Suika says it is not that she hates that, but she just thinks of Takimoto-san as an ordinary girl. Blushing as she leans against him, she adds that right now he is carrying a girl, isn't he? Then she suddenly asks why Arase-kun was at the sports hall in the first place, catching him off guard. Startled and sweating, Arase hesitates, wondering what he should say, before awkwardly trailing off. He finally admits that they only just met today, but he was worried about Takimoto-san's foot that much. Suika points out that as soon as she fell over, he rushed to her side like he already knew what would happen to her, while Arase flusters and hurriedly tries to deny it. With her face close to his, Suika softly calls out to Arase-kun, sounding like she has just realized something. Still clinging to his back, she wonders if it could be that he can see the future, while Arase looks ahead in stunned silence. That wild guess makes Arase jolt so hard he nearly freezes, sweat breaking out as he lets out a shaky, confused sound. Suika quickly smiles and starts to clarify what she meant. In her own head, she blurts out that she panicked, then awkwardly laughs it off and says that cannot be true, though she adds that it is possible, right? As he carries her on, Suika cheerfully explains that a drama she watched yesterday had a similar story, and Arase can only give a small, uneasy chuckle. Then she notices they have arrived and tells him to let her down. Once she is back on her feet by the doorway, Suika says she will be fine from here, and Arase quietly answers, well then, before she gives a small, surprised, oh. As Arase starts to leave, Suika calls out to him again, making him turn back. Facing him with a bright blush and a warm smile, Suika simply thanks him. Arase thinks that even when he knows the future, his life has not gotten any better, and that it actually just becomes more troublesome. As he looks at Suika standing there, he reflects that even earlier he was lucky it did not turn into a big deal. But there is no end to helping unfortunate people, and things often do not go well. In the quiet hallway, he hears Suika warmly thank him, and for just a bit today, he feels that maybe having a power like this is not so bad. The next morning, the scene shifts to the classroom. Arase stands there in confusion as someone dramatically cries out, asking why, Arase, and saying they trusted him. Another classmate hunches over in despair, declaring that this is undeniably a betrayal and calling it unforgivable. Then, one of them slams the accusation down, tearfully shouting that Arase had a girlfriend, while Arase fires back that he does not. From above, Arase insists they are lying, but the other student protests that there are many witnesses. The rumor is illustrated in absurd fashion as a girl clings to Arase and someone claims people said he carried a girl from the basketball team like a princess, while Arase strongly denies it. Turning away with an annoyed huff, Arase flatly says he only gave her a piggyback ride, then wonders how the rumor spread so fast. In the classroom, Asagiri coldly remarks that perverts really move fast, saying Arase already got a girlfriend right after transferring. Arase, thrown off by the accusation, looks over and awkwardly asks if Asagiri is saying that too. She presses him at once, pointing out that he was acting awfully cheerful despite skipping his job as a health committee member, then asks if he checked the hygiene products she had properly set up in the infirmary yesterday, and Arase can only blurt out that he forgot. As he apologizes for forgetting, he asks if that is why she is in such a bad mood. From the side, another classmate cuts in and tells Arase he is dense, saying Asagiri is just jealous, while Asagiri stays silent with her arms folded. With a tense little twitch in her expression, Asagiri starts to say that, well, the complaint comes spilling out that he ignored the job she asked him to do and went around flirting while carrying a girl like a princess, which would make anyone angry, while Arase insists that the story was exaggerated. Blushing but trying to stay composed, Asagiri says she does not care who he goes out with. Then she abruptly adds that he will still be attending the health committee meeting during lunch break that day, leaving Arase reeling in shock. When Arase reacts with a baffled me again, she flatly reminds him that, of course he is, because he skipped school 2 days ago. Asagiri explains that the committee meeting is not monthly, and says today is for preparing for next week's event. Arase looks puzzled, and asks what event she means. A classmate cheerfully jumps in, calling Arase Susuke and thanking him for asking before asking what is happening next week. With dramatic build-up, he tells them to prepare to be surprised, because the school's pointless event is mountain climbing, he announces excitedly, pumping a fist as Arase and Asagiri stare on. The explanation immediately softens it, saying that today is their outdoor school trip, or rather, mountain hiking. Already in tracksuits with backpacks, Arase grimly thinks this is bad and says he cannot believe such an event exists, while the other boy asks why he looks so unhappy when everyone else is happy, adding that Arase is the odd one here. The narration explains that the classes are split into small groups, and each group is supposed to head to its own checkpoints. Arase realizes with dread that this was supposed to be a fun trip, but his group members are Susuke when someone urges him to come on. He then sees the rest of the group is Asagiri and Kurase, basically the usual members, when Asagiri calls out to ask why the boys are dawdling like that. Looking back sharply, Asagiri warns that they will be late getting to their checkpoint. Asagiri turns back with a bright smile and asks if the boys are okay or tired, adding that if they want to rest a bit, they should just tell her. Before Arase can answer, another boy casually says that it is fine because these two are energetic, and she should just tell them to walk briskly, while Arase is left dazzled by how radiant Kurase's kindness always is. Even so, Arase thinks that mountain hiking is already depressing enough on its own, but admits he has another problem of a completely different kind to deal with now. As they continue along the path, he notices that the girl in front seems to have gotten separated from her group. Seeing her from behind, Arase realizes that this girl is exactly the other problem he was talking about. He identifies her as Fujibayashi-sana, a girl from another class who knows him because of a series of unusual events. He recalls that it all started right after the hike began, when his homeroom teacher, Kirihara-sensei, called him over and asked whether he knew Fujibayashi from class 3. Arase awkwardly said that he sort of did and asked why, while the teacher teasingly replied that she had picked up a hint of love comedy between the two of them. Kirihara-sensei then said she had one favor to ask, explaining that Fujibayashi seemed to have isolated herself from her classmates. She bluntly told him that that was why he should go with her and bring her into his group so they could all make youthful memories together, leaving Arase sweating at the forced setup. Arase remembers how Kirihara-sensei had told him that if he happened to notice Fujibayashi drifting away from her class, he should keep an eye on her, and when he pointed out that she was from a different class, the teacher simply wished him good luck, leaving him thinking, as always, that she was impossible to communicate with and that he had no choice but to accept it. In the present, that exact situation plays out as Fujibayashi really does drift away from her group right in front of them, trailing off alone while the others continue ahead. Watching her from the side, Arase starts wondering what they should do to bring Fujibayashi into their group, while another girl nearby worries about what happened to the rest of her own group and says she is concerned about Fujibayashi being alone. Kurase quietly points out that maybe leaving Fujibayashi alone is fine, since she might actually prefer going by herself, and Arase immediately feels that with Kurase guiding things, this might work out. Kurase then gently calls out to Yuri-chan and says she has to start getting along with the others, and all that comes back at first is a hesitant reply. Fujibayashi answers in a low voice that she is fine with Nanami alone. Hearing that, Arase bluntly sums up the situation in his head by deciding that this Asagiri girl is, in his words, just obsessed with Kurase. He instantly catches himself, panics over what he is thinking, and tells himself he needs to stick with Kurase's line of reasoning for now. Clearing his throat, Arase says Kurase is right, and that he has been too worried about leaving Fujibayashi alone, then quickly suggests that maybe they should bring her into their group after all, drawing both girls' attention. Asagiri immediately snaps back, demanding to know what on earth he is thinking, while Kurase lights up and says that sounds like a great idea. Asagiri suddenly jumps in, saying she will start talking to her right away, and Nanami immediately tries to stop her in surprise. Watching that, Arase thinks he is glad he left this to Kurase, remembering how she had boldly thrown herself into the river earlier and still impressing him with that initiative. As the girls exchange a glance while walking, Arase thinks the real question now is whether Fujibayashi will join them or not, and he honestly expects her to refuse their invitation. Seeing Kurase's calm face, he even thinks that if Fujibayashi refuses, he can at least report to Kirihara-sensei that they tried and used that as an excuse. In his head, he starts rehearsing how he will explain that they tried, but it was impossible, then stops with a puzzled look when something feels off. A rustling sound stirs around him, and Arase realizes he feels a strange pressure in the way someone is looking at him. Then, Fujibayashi faces him directly and, with a straight expression, softly tells him to please take care of her, leaving Arase frozen and sweating. He can only answer with a stunned, hesitant agreement while his mind screams that there is no way this is happening. Just like that, the plan to bring Fujibayashi into their group actually succeeds, but the atmosphere that follows is far from easy. As the group walks together under a heavy silence, with Fujibayashi close by and everyone looking awkward in their own way, Arase can only wonder what on earth is with this mood. As they walk, Arase thinks he wishes Fujibayashi would talk to the other girls too, but she has been keeping her distance from them. Nanami quietly says this is the worst, while the girl beside her admits her legs are going numb and says that if she had known it would be like this, she would not have come. Trying to ease the tension while they climb the mountain path, one girl suggests they chat during the hike since it would be a good distraction, but the other awkwardly says mountain hiking really is hard after all, and Fujibayashi bluntly tells them that if they are going to walk in silence, they should not blame it on the mood. The short-haired girl immediately tells Fujibayashi to stop doing that, while Nanami turns back in surprise as the words pass through the group. With a low, irritated sound, Fujibayashi starts to say that, rather, it is annoying when they are all so blatantly acting concerned about her, but the short-haired girl cuts in and tells her to hold up. Nanami steps forward angrily and says Nanami took the time to let her join their group, so she should not act like that. Arisa panics inside, wondering what he is supposed to do now as the mood keeps getting worse. While Fujibayashi flatly points out that she never asked any of them to let her join their group either. Seeing things spiral, Arase mentally cries out to Kirihara-sensei, thinking he knew this burden was too much for him to handle. Even so, he reminds himself that he was the one who encouraged his group to let Fujibayashi join, so he has to do something, while Nanami moves between the girls and orders both of them to stop right there. Then Nanami demands to know which side Arase is on, and he nervously blurts out that he is not on anyone's side, while she shoots back that she does not care and would not care even if he picked that delinquent girl's side. With a tense look and a bead of sweat on her face, Nanami says that if he really is going to do it, then he needs to be more careful. She then warns him that Fujibayashi is known for playing with guys and moving on from one to the next, while Fujibayashi stands there silently and stares back. Narrowing her eyes, Nanami goes even further and says he will just get played and tossed aside too. Fujibayashi quietly says that her presence here really was unnecessary after all, and that she will leave now while Arase reaches out in alarm. Before anyone can stop her, Fujibayashi suddenly dashes off, and Arase calls out for her to wait. A girl quickly says she will chase after Sana-chan and try talking to her one more time, while someone else tells Nanami to leave Fujibayashi alone already. Nanami hesitates, but the other girl tells her she does not need to worry about Fujibayashi, especially since she is from another class. The girl grabs Nanami's hands and begs Yuri-chan to stop this already. Flustered and blushing, she points out that Yuri-chan also said plenty of harsh things to Sana-chan. Watching the scene, Arase can only mutter awkwardly, while thinking this is probably the first time he has ever seen Karase get angry. A girl says she will go after Fujibayashi now. Arase watches with a worried look and thinks Fujibayashi probably should not have gone that far. As he goes after her, he admits to himself that this is a hassle, but Sensei entrusted her to him. His feet carry him onward anyway, as he thinks he does not want to leave her alone and get blamed for whatever happens afterward. He catches up to Fujibayashi sitting by a tree and awkwardly drops down nearby, saying he wants to rest because his feet hurt, while she looks over in confusion and asks what he means. Reaching out a little and sweating nervously, Arase gives a stiff, quiet acknowledgement. Looking at her seriously, he says honestly that he does not think she is willing to go back there. With her hands resting on her knees, Fujibayashi hesitantly asks what she is supposed to do now. Startled by the opening, Arase looks straight at her and asks if she despises him. Sitting beside her under the trees, he clarifies that he means because of what Asagiri said about her playing with guys, and Fujibayashi quietly answers that yes, she does. Holding her knees and looking down with damp eyes, Fujibayashi quietly says that she does not really despise him. Arase is caught off guard and asks why, then awkwardly starts to explain. Looking at her from the side, he says that based on her appearance. Sweating under her sharp stare, he stumbles through it and says that because Fujibayashi looks flashier, he just assumed that, so he does not feel any contempt for her. Fujibayashi listens in surprise, as he adds that they have talked once before, and based on that, he thinks it is probably just a baseless rumor. He recalls seeing her before at the mixer, when she even seemed irritated by the flirty guys, and says that even if she acts like that, he does not think she fools around with guys as much as people accuse her of. Arase tells Fujibayashi that, to him, whether she toys with guys or not does not matter, and that she should stop worrying about what others say and just live however she wants, the same way he always does. With his eyes lowered, he says he does not care about other people's opinions, and that is his principle. As Fujibayashi parts her lips in silence, Arase says he has decided to live without worrying about that kind of thing. Looking at him under the trees, Fujibayashi says he is kind of weird right now, and that usually he would have said something more clever, while Arase admits he is actually not good at this sort of thing. Fujibayashi quietly agrees, saying that is fine, and suggests they head back to the others because she would feel bad if his friends had said something unpleasant to him. Fidgeting with her clothes, she says that would really help her, but adds that now that they are alone here. With a blushing smile and a teasing look, Fujibayashi leans in and suggests they play a little game first. In a playful flashback, she bursts out laughing and says she is just kidding, while pointing out that Arase still seems to be a virgin. Arase, flustered and red-faced, blurts out that, of course, that is how anyone would normally react, then hurriedly says they should get moving already. As he calms himself, Arase thinks that for now everything seems fine since Fujibayashi is willing to go back, and he also resolves to think things over and act nicer once they rejoin the group. Back under the trees, one of the boys notices them and says they are back, while hoping no more problems come up. Before things can settle, someone urgently calls out to Erase with bad news, and he turns as the others begin to ask what happened. The report comes immediately that Karase is missing. Arase instantly recalls their first meeting, thinking that when they met, he felt Karase looked similar to this girl. Arase remembers thinking that when he first met Karase, it was as if she resembled the girl Nanami had imagined, almost like a message addressed to her beloved. In the quiet woods, footsteps rustle through the grass as Karase stands still with her bag straps in hand, looking around in confused silence. Staring into the unfamiliar forest, she wonders where this place is and how she ended up there. She recalls that Ito-kun had gone after Sana-chan for them, but she was still worried, so she ended up trying to chase after Sana-chan too, leaving the other girl shocked. Then, in a hurry, she remembers running after them while calling out for Nanami to wait, as another boy looked on in surprise. Now alone, Karase realizes she must have gone too far from everyone, and in the end, she could not find either of the two she was chasing. Glancing back nervously, she wonders where her path diverged from theirs and decides she should head back right away. But when she looks around at the trees again, she admits she no longer even knows which way back is. Trying to stay calm, she tells herself that if she simply retraces the path she came from, everything should be fine, and she forces herself to turn back at once. The moment she steps off, her shoe catches with a sharp knock, and she pitches forward with a heavy thud as a startled cry bursts out of her. Karase lands on the ground with a pained cry, then looks back in surprise as she realizes she tripped. Wincing hard, she checks herself and sees that her knee has been scraped. Letting out a weary sigh, she bitterly thinks that she is being a failure again. With her eyes downcast, she blames herself for making Sana-chan angry and for scolding Yuri-chan too. She then wonders what on earth she is even doing, thinking that she rushed off on her own and got stuck in this place. As her hand presses against the ground, Karase admits that she is scared and lonely where nobody can help her, though it feels like she has been alone in a similar situation before. Turning sharply as the thought hits her, she wonders what happened to her after that time, and the name Karase echoes in her mind. A hazy memory surfaces of someone from that time standing over her and asking if she was okay. That someone comes into focus as Ito-kun, tense and sweating, calls out for Karase and asks if she can hear him. Karase turns toward him in shock and asks what Ito-kun is doing in a place like this, while he immediately shoots back that he should be the one asking that. Ito-kun asks how things went with Sana-chan, then explains that when they got there, they learned Karase was missing and that Fujibayashi had already gone back with the others. A girl urgently tells them to tell her where Nanami is, saying Asagiri looked distraught, like there was a huge problem. Panicking, she says Asagiri went off to chase both of them and should have been with Karase, while someone else insists they never even met. Near tears, she says she could not reach her by phone either and anxiously asks what they should do. As someone fears that if something happens to Nanami it will be terrible, Ito-kun says that was unlikely since he had a hard time leaving that place, while an apology comes for making everyone worry. Karase looks over in silence and says that, well, at least she is glad. With a faint smile, Ito-kun finishes that thought by saying he is glad Karase is safe. Karase freezes, her face going red, staring blankly as she wonders what that thumping in her heart just was. When Ito-kun says they should start heading back and asks if Karase can walk, she jerks in shock and hurriedly answers yes. Surrounded by the trees, Karase asks if Ito-kun knows the way back, and his uncertain reply is only that he probably does. As they walk through the trees, Karase clutches her backpack strap and wonders why her heart keeps pounding whenever she talks to Ito-kun. Still blushing as she follows behind him, she stares ahead and quietly wonders what in the world is happening to her, until something suddenly catches her attention. Hearing her name, Karase looks up in surprise as Ito-kun hesitantly calls out to her. Pointing ahead along the trail, Ito-kun awkwardly asks if she can walk a little closer to his side. He explains that the path on that side looks damp, so it could be slippery. Karase quickly says he is right and thanks him for telling her, while Ito-kun, looking a little shy himself, quietly answers that it is nothing. As they continue walking, Karase realizes Ito-kun noticed her injury and had tried to be considerate of it. With a small smile, she thinks about how kind Ito-kun really is and remembers that he was also the one who suggested inviting Fana-chan into their group. Thinking back even further, Karase recalls that when they first met, Ito-kun was the one who saved her life. Staring at his profile, she realizes that now she has ended up being saved by him once again. In a sudden rush, Ito-kun grabs Karase and urgently calls for her to come closer, making her let out a startled little gasp. A moment later, Karase ends up pressed against his chest while Ito-kun holds her close, both of them going still with sweat on their faces from the shock. Karase's face instantly turns bright red, and she lets out a flustered, breathy squeak as her mind goes blank. Ito-kun is just as shaken, his own face flushing hard as he grimaces in embarrassed panic. He quickly pushes her back to arm's length and blurts out a frantic apology, awkwardly explaining that he only did it because of what was on that side. Still stumbling over his words, he points out that the side of the path looks slippery and says he thought it might be dangerous. Karase, blushing but understanding, thanks him and says he is right, while Ito-kun hurriedly says they should keep moving, and she realizes he really was worried about her. As they walk again, Kurase thinks to herself that Ito-kun is just too kind. Lowering her gaze with her cheeks still burning, she tells herself that he has always been like that. Clutching her face with both hands, Karase trembles with embarrassment and thinks that her face is burning. Ito-kun suddenly warns Kurase that she is about to stumble on a rock and tells her to be careful, making her jolt and blurt out a startled reaction before answering that, okay, she understands. Then another girl rushes in with a panicked look and calls out, asking if Nanami is all right. She grabs Karase in a tight hug, tearfully saying thank goodness she is safe, and excitedly calls her Yuyuri-chan. Karase turns to her group and apologizes, saying she made everyone worry. A moment later, she hesitantly speaks up with a quiet call to get their attention. Looking uneasy and holding her own arm, Karase apologizes for what happened earlier and says she is sorry for her bad manners. With a nervous swallow, she adds that she will be more considerate, and asks if they can keep moving together as a group until they reach their destination. One of the girls brightly encourages her, saying, of course they can, and adds that it would also be better if Karase talks to the others too, while Nanami stands there in silence beside them. Karase then turns and stares at Ito-kun with a flustered blush, and when he notices and awkwardly asks if something is wrong, she keeps looking at him. Finally, she thanks him for saving Nanami for her, and he quietly answers that it was nothing special. Looking away with a red face, Karase awkwardly explains that she was not keeping her composure, so he had to go after her, and she thanks him for that. Then, flustered and blurting it out, she demands to know whether, while he was alone with Nanami, he did anything suspicious, as he immediately shoots back that he absolutely did not. Another girl turns to Nanami and urgently asks if that is true and whether he did anything to her, leaving Nanami blinking in confusion. With Nanami still tucked against him, Ito-kun answers tensely that there was nothing in particular. Nanami, blushing all over, insists that everyone should believe her because he really did nothing. That only makes things worse, and in shock he cries out, asking what on earth she is saying, while insisting again that he did nothing at all. Off to the side, Karase watches with a heated face as someone remarks that, judging by the change in Nanami's expression alone, that claim is hard to believe. As the three stand together on the path, Karase realizes her face has suddenly turned hot again. Staring up at the open sky, she tells herself she is sure there is a reason for it. Touching her lips and averting her eyes, Karase concludes to herself that it is probably just because the weather is pretty hot today, right? The scene shifts to the outdoor school activity checkpoint, with the campsite spread out beneath the mountains. One of the girls takes charge and says that while she and Nanami handle preparing the curry, they should get started on the cooking. Carrying the tent supplies in his arms, Ito-kun is told that they will leave setting up the tents to him, and he falls silent. A girl awkwardly apologizes to Ito-kun, but says that after everything, she should help too, while another explains that, since Karase is injured, it would be better for her to make curry with asagiri. The narration explains that after all the trouble during this outdoor school activity, they finally reached the checkpoint, and now the heavy work of putting up tents and cooking dinner falls to all of them. As he walks off with the gear, Ito-kun thinks that setting up the tents alone is rough, and that he had at least hoped to do it with Sasuke. But Sasuke is busy handling the firewood distribution, even while dramatically lamenting that he wanted to cook curry with the girls too. Around the campsite, the tents are divided between boys and girls, even though most other groups have male and female members setting theirs up together. Left on his own with both tents, Ito-kun figures the girls will probably complain about the color if he picks one for them first, just as someone suddenly calls out in surprise, asking if that is Arate-kun. A cheerful girl runs up waving and happily realizes that it really is Arase-kun after all, while another voice calls out asking if it is Takimoto-san. Takimoto-san asks why he keeps calling her that and says it is fine for him to use her first name, while Ito-kun awkwardly admits that adding EPL-san to her given name feels strange too. Flushing hard, he hesitantly tries it out and calls her Suika, then inwardly admits he feels incredibly embarrassed. As that reminds him of the other day, he thinks that when he called Takimoto-san, or Suika, at the basketball club, he had a problem back then too. Suika looks at him in surprise when he suddenly asks whether her ankle injury is getting any better. Tapping her foot to show him, she says that Suika is totally okay now. Another girl explains that Suika had still been having a hard time with her ankle, so the teachers brought her here by car, and hearing that, Ito-kun realizes that was the situation and bitterly envies her. Holding the tent gear, Ito-kun is then asked, more importantly, whether Arase-kun is really planning to put both tents up by himself. He is told that if he does not mind, Suika can help him finish setting up the tents, and when he worries that dragging her into it might be bad and asks whether she does not need to help prepare the curry too, the others brush it off. With her arms folded, Suika explains that everyone in her group is bad at cooking anyway, and that the others have apparently gone off to another group's place to eat. Looking over at the nearby groups, Ito-kun wonders if that is even allowed, and someone answers that technically it is not, but as long as they do not tell the teachers, it should be fine. One of the girls explains that the beautiful but delinquent-looking girl, Fujibayashi, is in her group too, and says the others seem scared of her. She goes on to say that because Suika understands Fujibayashi, everyone decided to leave Suika alone to cook the curry with her, which means they will be eating dinner with another group. She adds that while Fujibayashi-san is off getting the ingredients right now, Suika has some free time, and that is why this works out. With a bright wink, Suika boldly says to let her help Arase-kun with the things he needs to do. Hearing that, Ito-kun admits he had been thinking that setting up both tents alone would be a pain, so he gratefully says he will count on her, and Suika cheerfully agrees. As they split up the gear, Ito-kun says that in that case, Suika should just take half the load. Smiling with her eyes closed, Suika says she is really fine, but Ito-kun still asks if she does not need to, since it looks pretty heavy. Suika pauses and softly answers that, even so, carrying the tent pieces himself, Ito-kun says he feels bad making a girl carry something so heavy. That word hits Suika at once, her face flushing as her heart pounds, and she stammers back in surprise, repeating, "A girl?" Another girl quickly tells Arase-kun not to worry, saying Suika is stronger than most of the boys there and even more reliable than they are, and Ito-kun awkwardly realizes he has been treating Suika like a girl while she also already helped with most of her own group's tent setup. Looking serious, Ito-kun says it does not matter what he said, and if she really wants to carry something, she should at least take the lighter one. As he hands over a smaller piece, Suika hesitates and softly trails off with an unsure little, Blushing hard and clutching the bundle to her chest, Suika shyly thanks him. Her whole body jolts at once, and when Ito-kun notices and asks if he should just carry them all after all, Suika hurriedly blurts out that it is totally okay. A tent stands finished, and the moment is marked by the simple announcement that it is done. Standing proudly with her hands on her hips, Suika says that thanks to her help they finished setting up much faster, tells him he can call Suika again whenever he needs help, and asks if that is not right. Ito-kun agrees, tells her she can count on him too, says she should do her best with cooking the curry, and Suika happily declares that since Fujibayashi-san is back by now, she will be leaving. While Suika waves and heads off, Ito-kun watches her with a sharp ringing feeling, thinking that for some reason her help came at exactly the right time, and he starts to say they should get back to. That ominous ringing grows louder, and Ito-kun suddenly realizes his precognitive vision has arrived at a weird time again. As the ringing hits, Ito-kun is left staring in shock, thinking in disbelief about what the hell that was just now. He forces himself to move, cutting off the moment with a quick anyway and saying they need to hurry back to Asagiri and the others' place. When he gets there, the scene from his vision is already in front of him. A pot has tipped over, dark curry has spilled across the ground, and the ladle lies beside it. Ito-kun freezes, wide-eyed and sweating, wondering what in the world all of this is. The whole cooking area feels heavy with gloom as one girl leans over the sink, another stands stiffly in the middle, and someone voices the same stunned question, asking what really just happened. Turning to them, Ito-kun admits he did not really understand his precognitive vision just now, and asks if they were the ones preparing dinner. In response, a girl starts to explain that if something happens, but another cuts in sharply, saying he should be able to understand just by looking. Looking at the spilled curry, Ito-kun says the fire must have been turned up too high, then adds that alone should not have made things end up this badly. The explanation comes at once. Someone says that is rough for Arase, and that Asagiri had told her she preferred a bigger fire to make the curry simmer, while another points out that Sasaoka was there too because they had added too much firewood. With Ito-kun listening, the short-haired girl apologizes and explains that at that moment, Karase was supposed to help someone else out for a bit. She explains that when she came back, she saw the cooking pot giving off thick black smoke. Still shaken, she says she was so shocked that she panicked and tried to put it out, and in the process she ended up splashing everything. Hearing that, Ito-kun grimly puts it together that she accidentally knocked the pot over, while inwardly wishing his precognitive vision had come much earlier. Even so, he says this cannot be helped and suggests they just make everything again. A classmate immediately tells him that their class has already run out of ingredients, and everything has been used up. When Ito-kun wonders if they can at least have rice for dinner, the blonde boy says even that would be too much to hope for Arase. He reveals the reason at once. The white rice has turned into black rice, leaving Ichukun reeling at how bad this is. Looking over the wrecked cooking area, they sum it up bitterly by saying all of them might have to skip dinner, while one girl can only say she wants to cry. Then another girl recalls that, if she remembers right, everyone in Suika's group is bad at cooking, and that according to what Suika said, the others were planning to go eat with another group. That gives Ichukun an idea, and he says that if they go to Suika's group, there might still be enough ingredients left to cook, though Arase reacts in disbelief. A ponytailed girl suddenly dashes off, saying she will be back soon, while someone protests that it is honestly unacceptable to rely on another class for something like this, only for her to insist that it is still worth the risk. A short-haired girl notices who she is and reacts in surprise, calling out Arase-kun's name. As the black-haired boy awkwardly remembers that Fujibayashi is there too, he asks Takimoto-san whether she and Arase know each other, and she explains with a smile that they had even set up the tents together earlier. He then asks what is wrong, while it is noted that even if her disputes with Asagiri and the others were mostly settled, bringing her back there again might not be a good idea, though another voice says this is not the time to worry about that. With a tense look, he admits that his group messed up dinner badly, while someone bluntly declares that being saved from going hungry is the top priority. Hearing that, the girl suggests they have dinner there instead, explaining that they had just been discussing how the food would be more than enough for 2 extra people, which makes the others light up and call it a lifesaver. The black-haired boy gratefully offers to help too, but the response is that they are still in the middle of cooking, so he should wait just a moment. Then the scene shifts to the cooking area itself, and the disaster is so severe that he can only blurt out whether this is a crime scene, while someone awkwardly starts to explain that they are just bad at cooking. Looking at the mess, he realizes that if he leaves it like this, they will be back to square one, while one girl insists they can somehow manage and the other admits she watched how people cooked but did not really understand it. Deciding it would end in a major problem otherwise, he forces a smile and asks if they can leave the cooking to him. The girls hesitate, then ask whether Arase-kun is going to cook. The blonde girl beams up at him and excitedly calls him their savior, while Arase stays visibly awkward under the praise. As the cookware and ingredients sit ready, they admit they honestly were not sure they could pull this off. Then ask if Arase is experienced at cooking, and he says that if it is just curry, he thinks he can handle it, which makes them say it is exactly as expected. A moment later, the finished curry is served beautifully over rice, sparkling so cleanly that the result speaks for itself. The group stares at the plates in amazement, with one clasping her hands in delight while the others look impressed and relieved. Standing around the table, they ask Ichukun if he really made all of this, and he awkwardly downplays it, only for them to tell Arase they are deeply indebted to him. Arase tells them to thank Suika's group for providing the ingredients, but they refuse, saying that in fact they are the ones indebted to this group, so they should be the ones giving thanks. The blonde girl then cheerfully says that now everyone should eat, before adding that, by the way, she shifts the conversation and asks Arase when he became close enough to Takimoto-san to call her by her given name too, making both of them pause. Leaning in with open curiosity, she bluntly asks whether the two of them are dating, leaving Arase stunned as Takimoto looks on in surprise. The two girls are left staring ahead in surprise, the moment hanging there as everything cuts off on that tense note. Tilting her head with a thoughtful look, the blonde girl repeats the idea back as if confirming it, wondering if she means the two of them are dating each other. Suika blushes and points at herself in confusion while Arase stands stiffly beside her, and she echoes the question in disbelief, asking if it is Suika and Arase-kun. Flustered beyond words, Suika immediately blurts out that it is impossible. Trying desperately to recover, Suika hurriedly explains that she is so used to being called by her first name that when Arase asked, she told him to do that too, and insists they are friends, so that should not be strange, while the other girl listens with a curious hum. As Suika fidgets nervously, Arase looks down and calmly says that if that is the case. The blonde girl suddenly leans in with a soft, dazzling smile and tells him that then he can call her by her first name too, inviting him to call her Sana. The dark-haired girl reacts at once, turning toward them in alarm and asking if she and Arase are not close too, while the other girl stammers beside her. Completely red-faced and dizzy-eyed, the ponytailed girl jumps in as well, insisting that he can call her Nanami too. Arase recoils in total confusion, lifting a hand as he mutters, "What the heck?" while both girls insist they are friends, right? Leaving him trying to tell them to wait a minute. Arase goes pale and blank with confusion, wondering what kind of situation this even is, before awkwardly starting with a hesitant, well? From his seat, he sees the girl staring at him, and the pressure of what he should do in a situation like this makes the silence feel even heavier as he starts to say, "So then?" Panic takes over almost instantly, and he blurts out that he wants to get out of there as fast as possible, announcing a bathroom break while one of the others tries to stop him, and another complains that Arase is the only popular guy there and that it is unfair. A moment later, he is already sprinting away from the table, and someone can only watch him go and remark that he really ran off. Nanami lowers her head and says it is fine and that they should leave him alone, then suggests they start eating without him. From above, the group settles back around the table, and someone agrees in a shaky voice that she is right. Watching quietly, Nanami thinks to herself that it is just as she suspected. As Sana cheerfully eats and praises the food, Nanami notices that ever since Sana came back with him, she has been acting a little strangely. Nanami recalls Sana admitting that nothing happened between the two of them, even as she remembers the image of Sana and Arase together. Holding her bowl, Nanami studies Sana and casually remarked that Ito-kun is great, is he not? Smiling brightly, Sana says Ito-kun can do anything and is always there to help when they are in a pinch, saying he is like a hero. Someone echoes that in surprise, and Sana explains that when she first met Ito-kun, he saved her from drowning. The ponytailed girl jumps in too, flustered and excited, saying he also saved Yuri-chan from a traffic accident that was about to happen, leaving the others stunned. Another girl adds that Suika was helped too, saying that when Suika got hurt during basketball club activities, Arase-kun came to her and took her to the school infirmary. From the table, one person hesitantly brings up the rumor that Takimoto-san was carried like a princess by him, only for a protest to shoot back that no, he did not do that and only let her ride on his back. Listening in silence, Nanami thinks that everyone is talking about Arase saving them, and then turns that thought to her own case. As the others stare over, Nanami finally begins to speak and says that for her, it was when she was being hit on. While a blonde boy keeps eating with a cheerful munching sound, someone nearby repeats her words in confusion, caught on the phrase, being hit on. The reaction spikes instantly as someone blurts out in shock, hit on, while Nanami calmly clarifies that it was when she skipped school and went out to play. The ponytailed girl jolts upright with her hair flying, demanding to know when that happened. Nanami thinks back and says she believes it was Tuesday last week, the day of the member meeting, adding that she had been feeling worn down and simply took the day off. As she glares with irritation, she admits to herself that she is still curious about his actions toward them, while inwardly fuming that that fool had the nerve to lie to her. Looking over the pattern, she points out that when Asagiri-san was about to get into that accident, and when he helped Kurase, who was drowning, it all lines up. She continues that the same goes for when Takimoto-san was injured, and says, these incidents do not feel like mere coincidence. Another possibility crosses her mind, that maybe he is simply a genuinely nice guy. But then, with a small tense look and a bead of sweat, she remembers how he got out of that earlier situation and thinks maybe that was not exactly very nice. She then decides that, even so, staying still in that atmosphere would not have been a good choice either. Shaking his head firmly, Arase tells himself that no, that would not be good. With sweat running down, he urges himself not to keep dwelling on past things forever. Under the open sky, he finally concludes in silence that he should head back. As Nanami works at the sink, she quietly reflects on everything that has happened. With her head lowered, she admits to herself that the others are right, because she is still curious about the way he acts toward them. While rinsing a sponge through the suds, she thinks that his actions really do not make much sense. She remembers that at first, she had simply thought he was a pervert after that close moment between them. But now she also recalls that he helped Nanami today and even stepped in to resolve the conflict between her and Fujibayashi. On top of that, she remembers being saved from drowning, and also that when Suika was injured during basketball club activities, Arase-kun came to Suika as well, making it feel even more certain. Even so, she thinks he is probably not a bad guy, but she still cannot help wondering why all of his help seems to be connected to girls. She then reflects that until recently, she had been fine with having a relationship with Manami, and she had only ended up talking casually with him because of that. Another thought follows, as she wonders if maybe that changed because that guy helped her too. She remembers hearing that he has difficult circumstances at home, and thinks that may be why he became such a hard worker. As Nanami recalls what she heard, she remembers that there were apparently some family circumstances, and reacts in surprise that he lives with the manager-san. Standing at the sink with her back turned, she compares herself to him and quietly thinks about that guy. Then, he appears behind her and says he has finally finished eating, before apologizing for being late. Startled, she snaps that he really is late, since because of him the cleanup is nowhere near done, though he points out that everyone else has already finished dinner, and she admits she did not expect everyone to be done eating by the time he got back. Seeing the curry already prepared for them too, he says he feels bad and asks to do the rest, but she tells him it is only a small problem. He hesitates and explains that, at first, he was the one who caused the problem. Nanami turns sharply, thrown off by what he is saying, and can only let out a shocked response as he continues. With a serious look, he declares that will not happen, adding that leaving all the dishwashing to her would only make him worry that she might break them all. She immediately fires back that she would not let that happen unless something very extraordinary occurred, while also admitting she had not expected someone to actually burn the curry to a crisp just by trying to cook it faster with more heat. Flustered and pointing at him, she blurts out that she heard everything, then accuses him of just slacking off and having fun because the member meeting day turned out that way. Flustered, he hurriedly denies it, insisting he did not think of Fujibayashi-san like that at the time, and says it was not because Fujibayashi was cornered by the East Club either. Nanami immediately presses him, asking if that happened again, then repeats his words in disbelief as she realizes he is saying he only pretended to hit on her to help her. He can only blink and awkwardly echo her reaction, repeating the word back with a confused little sound. As Nanami folds her arms and thinks it over, she realizes that if Fujibayashi-san was also helped by him, then there are starting to be too many overlapping incidents to dismiss as coincidence. Looking off to the side, she starts wondering if he might simply be an overly nice person. Then, facing him directly, she suddenly asks whether he is the type of person who studies with someone else before tests, leaving him caught off guard and only able to answer with a puzzled sound. After a pause, he says he guesses it depends on the time and the situation, and Nanami calmly responds that she sees. She turns away with a dismissive little remark of whatever, and he immediately stammers after her, asking what she means. With a restrained expression, he says he does not mind helping people out. Nanami looks back over her shoulder and cuts in, saying that when he is the one in trouble, what he does is different, and that is the problem with him. Nanami turns away and says with a cool shrug that it does not mean she cares what kind of person he is, leaving him blinking in confusion with a faint, uncertain sound. Then, more quietly, she starts to add that if he does not mind. Before she can finish, someone calls out to Yurei-chan, and a girl waves cheerfully as another student stands beside her. They report that the sleeping bags have already been brought to the tents, including Arase's sleeping bag. Nanami thanks them, and as they mention they are almost done and only need to return the dishes, he hesitantly tries to speak up with a small, awkward hey. Looking back over her shoulder while holding the dishes, Nanami asks if there was something he wanted to say just now, but she immediately shuts it down herself, saying it was nothing and that she did not say anything, while he can only make a baffled little noise behind her. Left standing there, he admits to himself that he does not really understand, while reflecting that he had almost started blurting out strange things because of that guy. At the same time, Nanami walks on in thought, realizing there may be some similarities between him and herself. She falls silent, her expression tightening as the thought lingers. With everyone already gathered, Nanami announces that they are finally ready for the outdoor school trip's biggest event. Beaming with excitement, she declares that the test of courage contest is about to begin. As slips rustle in everyone's hands, she explains that the pairs were decided by the lottery they just drew. Looking at the boy beside her, she adds that each pair needs to work together to reach the goal. Standing before the group in the dark woods, Nanami says she will now explain the rules of the test of courage contest. Pointing to a simple route, she explains that next to the lodging there is a mountain trail, and if they go straight along it, they will reach a Jizo statue that serves as the goal. She continues that paper chits prepared by the teachers are placed at that statue, and as proof of reaching the goal, each pair must bring one back. Without dragging things out any longer, she announces that the event will begin. As he walks ahead with Nanami following behind, she reacts with clear annoyance, thinking that this is such a pain. Watching him keep the lead, Nanami snaps that he should walk faster, while he flatly notes that, of course, she is making him go in front. Even so, he finds himself thinking that this Asagiri girl is somehow different as the two keep walking through the dark woods, the leaves rustling around them. Nanami suddenly tells him to stop, and when he turns and asks what happened, she brushes it off and says it is nothing. As they take another step, something about the distance between them feels different. He realizes, with a jolt, that she is walking extremely close behind him, practically right at his back. Calling her Asagiri, he looks back, and Nanami stares at him wide-eyed as if startled by being addressed. He points out that if she clings to him that much, it will be hard to move forward, and she immediately protests that she is not clinging to him. After shifting back just a little, Nanami says that this should be fine now, but he still tells her that it is way too close. Then he notices that she is also casually gripping the sleeve of his tracksuit. Looking at her again, he starts to think that maybe there is a reason for this. He turns to Nanami and guesses that Asagiri might actually be scared. When he guesses that Asagiri might actually be scared, Nanami instantly fires back that it is impossible and basically calls him an idiot, while he thinks that saying it out loud was probably a mistake since this is Asagiri after all. Out on the dark path, Nanami falls silent with an awkward pause between them, and he worries that he is going to get scolded for this. Turning toward her, he cautiously calls out to Asagiri. Blushing hard and avoiding his eyes, Nanami stammers that that is not the case as she hugs herself in visible embarrassment. Her flustered denial only makes him point out that this is exactly how a scared person would react, and that unexpected remark makes her snap back that she already told him she is not. Still red-faced, Nanami abruptly tells him to forget it and says they should just get this task done as soon as possible, while he starts to move on and she lets out a small, startled sound. As he goes ahead, she quickly calls for him to wait and warns him not to dare go off alone, and he realizes that Asagiri actually has a cute side too. Before long, they arrive at their destination, and he says he thinks they have reached the goal, identifying the small figure in front of them as the Jizo statue. Crouching by the offering basket with his flashlight, he says that once they take the paper charm, they can head back. Nanami tells him to take it and come back quickly, and he answers simply that he will, while thinking he had wondered how this would go after being paired with Asagiri. As he reaches for the charm, a sudden metallic zing makes him freeze, and he thinks that, surprisingly, things had been going smoothly until now. In the next instant, Nanami throws herself at him in a panic, clinging tightly as she blurts out that there is no way she wants to keep doing this anymore, while he can only yelp in shock. Pointing into the darkness ahead, she cries that something is moving over there. He tries to calm her down, insisting that there is nothing there, but she desperately argues that she can feel things touching her body. Still wrapped around him, she urges him to look as the bushes nearby rustle loudly. Then the source finally appears, and it turns out to be nothing more than a cat stepping out from behind the shrubbery with a small meow. Seeing it, he realizes with relief that it is just a cat, while Nanami remains pressed against him. The moment that sinks in, Nanami jerks back with a flushed, teary-eyed face, utterly mortified by what she just did. As he awkwardly scratches his head, her outrage explodes, and she accuses him of touching her in the wrong place like a pervert, while he silently thinks that she was the one who had insisted on clinging that close to him. Flustered and sweating, he bitterly realizes that this was yet another one of his lousy precognitive visions coming true. Even if he tried to avoid it, he still had no idea when that scene would happen, and when Nanami asked what was wrong, he brushed it off as nothing. He reasoned that the moment he heard Asagiri scream, he should quickly move out of the way. But then he realized that if he dodged her, the running Asagiri would miss him and crash straight into the ground instead. Since there was no real way to avoid her, he figured the worst case would be having to endure her angry scolding afterward. Nanami then quietly asked what he thought they should do. As they walked, he suddenly wondered whether, before anything else, he should really be trying to avoid a scene from his precognitive vision at all. Thinking it through, he admitted that being called a pervert by Asagiri would not exactly be anything unusual. But the very next instant, flushed and tense, he firmly rejected that idea and decided he had to avoid it no matter what. Making up his mind, he told Asagiri there was no point in overthinking it anymore. Then, holding the flashlight and facing her directly, he said there was something he wanted to tell her. Asagiri froze with her heart pounding, her eyes widening as she could only let out a confused, stunned little sound asking what he meant. Looking flustered and sweating, he awkwardly began by saying that what he was about to say might surprise her. Standing in front of her in the dark, he hesitated and then said that, actually, there was something she should know, while Asagiri nervously asked what on earth he was talking about. He finally blurted out that, in just a moment, a cat would suddenly jump out. Asagiri stared at him in disbelief, and when he added that it would come from the bushes over there on the right, she could only respond with a baffled sound. Right then, the bushes rustled and a cat really did appear, meowing from exactly where he had said. A noisy burst followed. Asagiri cried out in shock, and he calmly remarked that he had told her so. As they walked on, he noted that, thanks to warning her in advance, she had not ended up clinging to him, while Asagiri admitted that it really had startled her. Then Asagiri suddenly stopped short, staring at him with a shocked gasp as the realization hit her. She immediately turned on him and demanded to know why in the world he had known that a cat would jump out from there. Realizing he had completely messed up, he blurted out a shaky excuse, saying that maybe he should have thought of a better alibi first, while awkwardly trying to claim that was what he meant. Still sweating, he hurriedly added that he had pretty sharp ears, so that was why he knew, but Asagiri only answered with a long, silent pause. Then she told him to forget it, saying she knew he was just that kind of guy anyway. Asagiri started walking ahead and remarked that if he kept acting like an idiot, maybe it was better for him to keep burdening himself with all his problems. He froze at that, and as she looked back, she asked him what he would do when he was the one in trouble. Caught off guard, he called out to her by name, shouting, "Asagiri." He quickly apologized and said that, after thinking it over, he had realized he had not explained himself clearly enough, especially about what she had said earlier when they were cleaning up after dinner. Looking down awkwardly, he admitted that even when he has a problem, he usually does nothing, or rather, he does not even know what the right thing to do is. Asagiri let out a small laugh and said that his past self probably would have insisted on handling everything alone. Then, to his complete surprise, she suddenly suggested that they exchange contact information. Asagiri said she did not mind exchanging contact information, but then realized her smartphone was still back at camp, so she said she would ask him again later because she had left it there. She went on to say that if there was anything he was struggling with for the exam, she would not mind teaching him, and when he only replied with a confused hum, she started to repeat herself. Blushing hard, Asagiri suddenly burst out that if he was having a problem, he should rely on someone else's help, insisting that this was what she had been trying to say. He stared after her in total confusion, admitting to himself that he really did not understand, while she briskly told him to come on and head back fast, and he hurriedly called for her to wait for him. After that, nothing else happened until lights out, and he reflected that they had faithfully made it through the test of courage, though he still wondered if Asagiri had been worrying about him in her own way. The next scene shifted to a house, where Asagiri arrived at the entrance. Sliding the door open, she called out that she was home and addressed her grandma. But when she looked down at the mudroom, she noticed an unfamiliar pair of shoes and could only let out a startled, uncertain sound. A sudden crash rang out from deeper inside, and Asagiri shouted for her grandma while noticing that the shoes in the mudroom were still there. She immediately rushed through the doorway in alarm, eyes wide as she ran toward the sound. Inside the house, a young man turned toward Asagiri with a calm look and said it had been a long time, calling her big sister. The scene abruptly shifted into a downpour, with heavy rain pouring over a dark landscape. In the rain, a hooded figure stood alone as a shaken voice wondered who it was. Looking closer through the storm, the voice hesitantly asked what had happened. Then something on the ground came into view, and the voice realized there was blood. As the body became clearer, the voice noticed someone lying on the ground and recognized the school uniform, wondering if she was one of his classmates. Startled, he demanded to know what on earth was happening there. Staring at the hooded figure's eye beneath the soaked hood, he asked in horror if that person had killed her. He jolted awake with a gasp, drenched in sweat and wide-eyed from the shock. In the quiet room, he trailed off and realized it had just been a dream. Sitting on the bed and catching his breath, he reflected that a dream about someone dying was still a bad omen. Seeing the time on his phone, he realized he was going to be late. With sweat still on his face, he thought that somehow it felt like he was getting one of his usual precognitive visions. Even so, he tried to tell himself it was just a dream and had nothing to do with that ability, deciding he should just go to school for now. But the moment he arrived, Asagiri slammed the door and crossed her arms, bluntly telling him that he was too late. He raised both hands and dryly remarked that this was happening again, wondering if maybe she was doing it on purpose. While awkwardly insisting that this time he really was not at fault, he inwardly panicked, wondering why Asagiri's attitude had suddenly gone back to how it was before the school outing. He remembered that during the outing, their distance had seemed to shrink, even to the point where she had urged him to exchange contact information with her, and he had agreed. Then he noticed the classroom notice saying that because he was late, today's class duties had all been handed to Asagiri, and he realized with alarm that it had originally been their shared turn. A smiling classmate told him it was his fault for getting too close to a girl again and casually apologized. Asagiri coldly told him to forget it, adding that she was just getting tired of it, and hearing that, he was caught off guard by how quickly she had let the matter go. Then someone suddenly called out to Ito-kun, making him glance over with a tense, uneasy look. He saw Karase smiling brightly at him as she waved and cheerfully greeted him, saying good morning and that she was glad he came. Standing in a classroom, Karase said she had something to talk about involving Yuri-chan and him, while he reacted in surprise at the idea of a talk. With sparkling enthusiasm, Karase proposed that during the upcoming holidays, they should all go out and have fun somewhere together. She added that the previous school outing had been really fun, so she thought they should all do something again, and one classmate agreed that if Karase felt that way, then he should come too. Another boy jumped in confidently, saying to leave it to him because he already had the perfect recommendation in mind, even though he had not decided on a place until then. He proudly revealed that the destination would be the pool, brushing off the season as no problem, while an imagined image of the girls in swimsuits fed his shameless excitement over how fun that would be. Karase gave a shy little response about swimsuits, but then she softly apologized to Nanami. Nanami lowered her gaze and calmly said she already had plans for that day, so she would not be able to join them. Karase looked surprised for a moment, while he quietly took in Nanami's refusal and thought that if Yuri-chan could not come, then it really could not be helped. Karase quickly brightened again and cheerfully suggested that they could just make another plan for a different day, but he found himself distracted, thinking Asagiri's expression just now had felt strangely off. As he brooded over it, he recalled that Asagiri had been full of energy when she was scolding him earlier, and another classmate casually guessed that she might simply be feeling unwell. Hearing that, he could only hope it was nothing more than a hunch. After the dismissal bell rang through the school, he was getting ready to leave when someone suddenly called out to Ito-kun. He turned to find Karase blushing and clutching her bag as she shyly asked if they could walk home together. The sudden invitation left him completely thrown off, and while wondering what this unexpected turn was, his first thought was of Asagiri. Karase explained that Yuri-chan had some business and had already gone home earlier, then added that there was something else as well. Looking up at him with a nervous, earnest expression, she said that actually, there was something she wanted to ask his advice about. The word consultation hit him so unexpectedly that he froze on the spot, stunned by yet another surprise. With Karase saying she had something to consult him about, he could only answer yeah and go along with her, all while wondering what in the world was happening as she asked if they should go now. Walking beside Karase after school, he stayed stiff and silent while she, holding her bag and looking tense herself, admitted that somehow she was getting really nervous. When Karase finally began with a hesitant will, he jolted in panic and blurted out a shaky yes. She quickly apologized for asking him so suddenly, and he hurried to say it was okay, that he did not mind, and asked what she wanted to talk about. Then Karase revealed that the matter was about Yuri-chan, and his expression immediately sharpened. Thinking back on the day, he said he had also felt that Yuri-chan's mood had been a little strange, which made Karase react in surprise that he had noticed it too. Turning toward him with wide eyes and a faint blush, Karase started to wonder aloud if that meant Ito-kun had sensed it too. The next instant she lit up, declared that she knew it, and happily said she had been wondering whether Ito-kun would notice or not as she suddenly grabbed his hand in excitement. Caught completely off guard by the unexpected handhold, he flushed hard and could only let out a stunned, confused sound. Still holding his hand, Karase awkwardly explained that in her case it was more of a vague feeling, then added that even that alone was already plenty since he had been Yuri-chan's longtime friend. Still blushing from the sudden contact, he gasped as Karase, holding his hand, nervously started to say that Ito-kun might. She abruptly let go with a quick apology, saying it was nothing, while he stood there flustered, his hand still half raised from the sudden release. As they continued walking, she asked if he had any idea what was going on with Asagiri, and he could only give a hesitant yes. Looking down seriously, he said he did not think it was really his place to talk about it. But after a pause, he admitted that maybe, glancing toward her tense expression, he said it might be related to Yuri-chan's family. He then explained that Yuri-chan usually lived with her grandmother, just the two of them. Karase asked if that meant she lived apart from her other family members, and he confirmed that she did, though he added that he did not know many of the details. Remembering Yuri-chan walking away and telling him that acting like an idiot and carrying all the problems alone was better than dumping the burden on everyone else, he realized that girl had said that to him before. With that memory lingering, he thought that if she was saying she wanted to be some kind of support for Yuri-chan, then maybe Yuri-chan was really talking about herself too. Karase looked troubled and said that if this was really about her family, then she did not think an outsider could just step into those problems. He apologized again, admitting it was a strange thing to ask about, but said he was simply worried. Then she hesitantly added that if something really had happened and if he were Asagiri, he should just say it right away. She reminded him that he was Asagiri's best friend, right? Folding his arms, he said that for now it was probably not a good idea for her to keep watching over Yuri, especially since that role should belong to her best friend, though he understood why Karase was so worried about her. Karase quietly accepted it, saying she understood and that he was right. A bright smile spread across her face as she thanked him a lot. Turning to him warmly, she said she was glad she had talked it over with Ito-kun, and he, still flustered, said that was good to hear. As he watched her, he reflected that it really had been a consultation, and his thoughts returned to Asagiri. He remembered the school outing when, despite talking a big game about relying on someone if there was a problem, she herself had not relied on anyone's help when she was in trouble, just like him. Then Ito called out to Karase and, after a brief pause, said that in that case, holding up his phone, he asked if they could exchange contact information. He quickly explained that if she got worried about Asagiri again, he wanted to hear about it too, though if she did not want to, that was fine, and Karase could only repeat in surprise that exchanging contacts meant with him. Staring at him wide-eyed, she murmured in disbelief that it would be her and Ito-kun exchanging contacts. A second later, her face went bright red and she froze up in flustered shock, clutching a hand near her mouth as her heart clearly skipped a beat. While collecting herself, she nervously blurted that she did not hate the idea at all and actually wanted to, and Itu, caught off guard, could only answer that if so, then okay. The moment passed into a quiet view of the street and sky as they wrapped things up there. Back at the entrance, Ito said he was heading that way anyway, and Karase beamed, thanked him a lot for today, and told him she would see him tomorrow. He walked off down the narrow street alone while Karase remained behind, watching him go. Then she turned back with a soft, lingering smile, her hair swaying gently as the scene settled into calm. Left alone with her thoughts, Karase tilted her head and wondered if what she was feeling might just be her imagination. But as she walked away down the street, someone in a hood stayed hidden behind a utility pole and silently watched her go. Then the story shifted back to the first day of the consecutive holidays, with Karase already sitting alone at a cafe. Itu explained that he and Karase had actually been secretly tailing Asagiri. He said it had all started that morning when he got a call saying Yuri-chan seemed to be hanging out with a boy no one recognized, and that was what led Karase to contact him. Karase had told him she was worried because Yuri-chan had ignored all her calls since yesterday, so she had gone to wait outside her house, and since Yuri did not seem in the mood to talk, she asked if he could come with her to follow along. Sitting at the cafe, Karase added that Yuri had been there alone the whole time, though a boy had been with her not long before Itu arrived. Hearing that, Itu admitted he had been worried as soon as Karase mentioned a boy, though for now he decided to put aside his curiosity about who that boy was. Then, as another thought hit him, he started to bring up something else. The answer came quickly when he noticed Suika and Fujibayashi there too, and it was explained that after finishing work on the school outing report, Suika had wanted to hang out, so the two of them happened to run into Karase there. As he put the pieces together, Itu said he had talked to her and heard Arase was coming too, then admitted he had been thinking a little about Asagiri's situation. Karase, standing there in thought, wondered if maybe Asagiri was simply out on a date with her boyfriend. That suggestion shocked the others so much that someone blurted out in disbelief that she had a boyfriend, only to be immediately hushed for being too loud. Flustered and blushing, Karase apologized and said that maybe that really was the case, especially since Asagiri had never told her anything about it after all. Itu awkwardly tried to smooth it over, saying he understood, and that just because she had a boyfriend did not mean she had to tell Karase. As the group walked together, he added that maybe the timing just had not felt right for Asagiri to tell her, and then a voice politely called out to excuse them. A young man in a hoodie faced them with a calm smile and suggested that perhaps they all had something to do with Ni-chan. The group repeated that word in confusion, and he clarified that he meant the black-haired girl sitting over there, a girl named Asagiri Yuyuri. Smiling brightly, he introduced himself, saying he was her little brother and that they could call him Yuto. Back at the table, the revelation stunned them, and it was explained that Yuri-chan had had a little brother all this time, though he added that they usually lived separately. Hearing that Asagiri had a little brother, he figured that kind of situation really could happen, but at the same time he felt like he had seen the boy somewhere before. Meanwhile, Asagiri sat with her back turned, and it was explained that this was supposed to be the first time in a while she got to hang out with him that day, but she had noticed some people staring at her. The boy quickly apologized and asked if they were sorry because they had seemed suspicious, then said no, and explained that from the way they had all been looking at Ni-chan, he had assumed they were her friends. He then added one more thing and addressed her directly, saying she was Kurase Nanami-san, right? Kurase froze as he explained that Ni-chan had talked a lot about Nanami-san, so he recognized her right away and that Asagiri had said, "Nanami is my best friend." That left Kurase blushing in shock as the words "best friend" echoed in her mind. Beside her, the boy calmly confirmed that yes, Yuri-chan had always told him that about her. Kurase looked overjoyed to hear it, especially after how worried she had been just a moment earlier. And from her expression, it seemed hearing that Asagiri thought of her as her best friend had relieved her more than anything. Asagiri still kept her back turned, too embarrassed to face them after what her little brother had revealed. Yuto then brought up the others, turning toward the group as if to ask about them too. They introduced themselves one after another as Asagiri's classmates, with the girl on the right awkwardly clarifying that she was Yuri-chan's schoolmate, and the others adding that they were too. Hearing that, Yuto quietly took it in and said he understood. Looking at the group, he remarked that it seemed Ni-chan had really been doing her best. He explained that although he had talked with her a lot before, the two of them were living separately, so he had realized there were still many things he did not know about her. Then he turned to Karase and hesitantly called out to Nanami-san. Blushing a little, Yuto politely asked whether, if she did not mind, she could tell him a lot about Ni-chan. He explained that because she cared so much about him, he wanted to know what she was normally like. But he quickly added that he would be embarrassed if she found out, so he would prefer for them to do it secretly, leaving the others unsure how to respond. If that was the case, the short-haired girl suggested they all just hang out together, with Asayuri-san included too. The short-haired girl said that doing it in secret was lame, and if they were going to do it properly, they should have her hang out with them too, just like she usually did. Hearing that, Yuto accepted it right away and said she was right, trailing off into calm agreement. Nanami was left staring in confusion, wondering what was actually happening here, and whether this suddenly included Fujibayashi-san and the others too. One of the girls awkwardly explained that they had simply run into Yuto-kun there, and then he had just greeted them. Yuto added that he had thought he spotted Ni-chan's friends, so he spoke to them and decided they should all hang out together while they were there. After a brief pause, Nanami quietly said that if Yuto said so, then she did not mind. With that settled, Yuto brightly said he was looking forward to everyone helping him today, and when someone asked what they were planning to do after this, the answer came back that they had not decided yet. The scene shifted outside as the group headed off together. At a crepe stand, the short-haired girl cheerfully recommended the crepe stall as the basketball club's top pick and urged them to try it, while Asagiri and the others enjoyed their food and remarked that it was delicious. Later, near a crane game, the short-haired girl called out for Arase to do his best, while Yuto eagerly pointed ahead and told Nichan that they should visit that shop next. As they wrapped up, Yuto thanked everyone for today with a bright smile, and beside him, Nanami quietly reflected that they had had a lot of fun. One of the girls said she had a lot of fun too and thanked them as well, while another suggested it was about time to head home. Someone pointed out that they were all going to the same nearby station and suggested walking there together, but Suika immediately declined. When the others reacted in surprise, Suika explained that she was actually heading in another direction and asked Arase to take her to the station. Arase looked caught off guard, feeling strange pressure from Fujibayashi, while Suika told him that was fine and urged him to come along since he did not mind. Kurase blushed and worried this might make things awkward, but another girl apologized and said she would head in that direction with Suika, and Kurase awkwardly answered that it was okay. Even so, someone called out to Kurase and told her that if anything happened, she should not hesitate to call. Kurase replied with a cheerful smile that she understood and thanked her. After that, the group split up and started walking off together down the road. Then, as Yuto walked beside Suika, he turned to her and asked what they were going to do after this. Suika called out to Arase and suggested they start walking. As they walked, Suika brought up Asagiri's little brother and asked Arase what he thought of him. Caught off guard, Arase repeated that she meant Asagiri's little brother and said that, if she was asking him, Arase answered that he did not think anything in particular about the boy and only felt that he seemed like a cheerful kid. Then added that earlier, when he and Suika had just spotted Kurase, she had. He recalled noticing that the little brother had been staring at Kurase from quite a distance away. Suika explained that she had not known who he was at first, so she thought he was some suspicious creep, and that scared her enough to think they should talk to Kurase and settle it quickly. Araz pointed out that once she learned he had been looking at his sister's best friend, maybe he had just been too shy to talk to Kurase. Suika admitted that might be true, but said she still felt that something about him seemed a little off. While Arase hesitated and asked what she meant, Suika folded her arms and said she did not want to jump to conclusions about him. Even so, she quietly admitted that she felt he had not been acting normally. Arase froze with a gasp as Suika confessed that she had felt like the boy was looking at Kurase with hatred, and that the thought terrified her. Then it suddenly clicked for her, and she said that when she saw his face for the first time, she felt like they had met somewhere before. Suika explained that she had first dismissed it as just a hunch, since he was only Asagiri-san's little brother, and she did not want to say something strange and cause another conflict like last time. Looking uneasy, she admitted that was why she felt she could only talk about this with Arase. Hearing that, Arase went quiet, and one thought rose to the surface as he focused on that face. He realized it was the face of the boy who had appeared in his horror dream. As that memory connected with the present, he wondered if the boy had been targeting Kurase this whole time, and if so, that would mean the schoolgirl lying unconscious on the ground in that dream was. Suika noticed his sudden silence and leaned in, softly calling his name to get his attention. Arase snapped back and, visibly shaken, repeated Kurase's name in alarm. He immediately blurted out that he had messed up and should have gone in Asagiri and the others' direction, while Suika reacted in stunned confusion, and he thought that if the dream really was a precognitive vision, then that meant… Arase jolted in panic, realizing Kurase might be in danger, and called out that he was coming too. At the station, Kurase and the girl beside her turned at the sound of someone shouting Kurase's name. Seeing him rush up, the short-haired girl asked Ito-kun what was wrong, while another girl noted that, for now, nothing seemed to have happened. Arase immediately asked where Asagiri and her little brother were, and Kurase answered that they had just parted ways with them a moment ago. As he processed that, he was told that Suika had wanted to stop by a convenience store, and Arase could only respond that he understood. The girl then asked if he had needed something from Yuri-chan, and Arase flinched with a strained groan. Up close, he hesitated and thought that he could not exactly tell them about what had just happened, only managing an uneasy mumble. He quickly said that he had just remembered something Asagiri had asked him to do, but added that it was nothing urgent right now, and the girls looked at him with quiet uncertainty. The short-haired girl then suggested that, since they were all there already, they should head home together, while casually adding that she had impulsively come along too, so she would take the same train and transfer on the way, and Arase awkwardly agreed. Arase thought he should ask her directly, but held back, and as the girl told him to make sure he got Sina home safely, he answered that he understood and resigned himself to trying to contact Asagiri later. The next morning began under a quiet sky beside the neighborhood houses. Arase stared down at his phone in silence, tense and sweating as he waited for any response. On the screen, his unsent anxiety was obvious in the messages he had sent Asagiri, saying he had something to ask. asking if she was busy, and even pleading that he was in trouble. Sitting alone at the table, he realized in alarm that she was not replying at all, and that she had not even read any of it. Her earlier words came back to him, telling him that if he was having a problem, he should rely on someone else's help, and he could only wonder what all of that had been about. As he looked toward the open doorway, he thought that over the whole holiday, he had not been able to reach her even once, and started to wonder if he had been blocked. Even so, he forced himself to settle down and reminded himself that school started today. With the school building ahead and the morning bell ringing, he decided that the first thing he would do when he saw Asagiri was ask about her younger brother. In the classroom, the teacher greeted everyone with a cheerful good morning, and Arese reacted with a small, uneasy pause. Sitting rigidly at his desk, he looked ahead in surprise and wondered if Asagiri was absent today. Arese sat at his desk and realized that, either way, Asagiri not being there was unusual, leaving him wondering if she was just running late or actually absent. His thoughts then turned to Kurase too, and he noted that she did not seem to know anything either. Since she still had not replied, he could only connect that silence with what he had heard from Fujibayashi. Resting his chin on his hand, Arase started to wonder if Asagiri's absence and the matter involving her little brother could be related after all. He recalled a crowded street scene where a younger boy had been called Yuto, and someone had stopped him with a quick call to wait a moment. In that memory, Asagiri stood there in her school uniform and gently asked what it was, calling him Mi-chan. Under the morning sky, she had been told that maybe he should still go to school even if he was already late, and Yuto could only answer with a confused sound. Asagiri then tried to reassure him, saying that missing one day would be fine, and that if he went home now, she would not be able to see him for a while, while reminding him that even he had said just a moment ago that it was fine. Looking troubled, she agreed that he was right, as Arase's thoughts explained that Yuto had originally been supposed to return home at the end of the long holiday. The memory continued at the station, where, because of family circumstances, that plan had changed to this morning, and when she went to see him off before school, Yuto had even suggested that they could just skip school that day and go have some fun somewhere instead. In that memory, Yuto smiled and told her she could not do that because she had school, but he also insisted his grades were excellent, so taking a day off was perfectly fine. Asagiri looked at him and heard Yuto pressed her again, saying it was fine and calling her Ni-chan. Arase recalled that she ended up getting swept along by Yuto, letting him take the lead and skipping school as they wandered off somewhere she did not even know. In the busy city, Asagiri quietly took in how lively and crowded the area was, noting to herself that it was nothing like the neighborhood near her grandmother's house. As they kept moving through one packed place after another, she admitted that even during the holiday she had just been tagging along with Yuto, and all the people were starting to make her feel overwhelmed. The memory added that the truth was she was not good with crowds and missed her usual cafe when someone from home called out to her as sis. Yuto, still cheerful, pointed ahead and suggested they take a break at a shop over there. Asagiri agreed, though she noticed there were so many people there too, and Yuto remarked that it was apparently a really popular spot. Once they stopped, Yuto told her he would go place the order and asked her to wait there, and she thanked him. Left on her own, Asagiri suddenly remembered her phone and realized Yuto had told her to keep it off the whole time. Asagiri thought there might be messages from Nanami, or maybe from him too, then remembered that Yuto hated it whenever she looked at her phone and seemed to think she never paid any attention to him. As she checked it, her eyes widened and she was left staring in shock, wondering what this was. On the screen, under Itu Arase, several messages were lined up asking to talk, asking if she was busy, and pleading for Asagiri to help because he was in trouble. Then, a stern woman appeared before her with folded arms and coldly asked what she was doing in a place like this. Startled, Asagiri could only let out a small sound as the woman sharply remarked that skipping school and enjoying herself took a lot of nerve. From above, the woman first apologized, then added that she had heard Yuto was here, making Asagiri jolt as she recognized her as mother. Asagiri froze at the table, inwardly panicking over who on earth had told her that, while confusedly repeating Yuto's name to herself. Around them, people continued entering and sitting in the crowded cafe as the ordinary bustle carried on. With tears gathering in her eyes, Asagiri looked shaken and realized he had said he was going to place the order, then wondered where he had gone. The woman stood over her while Asagiri faltered and admitted that she did not know. Looming over her, the woman coldly warned Asagiri not to play dumb. She angrily accused Asagiri of being the one who had dragged Yuto out there. Asagiri sat frozen as the woman declared that Yuto was different from her, that he was a good child, and that there was no way he would leave the house without telling her, then demanded to know if Asagiri understood. Still stunned, Asagiri heard her add that, while his grades might be a little poor right now, Asagiri could only blink in confusion. Remembering Yuto's smiling face, Asagiri hesitantly thought that he had told her his grades were excellent. The woman narrowed her eyes and repeated it back in disbelief, asking if Yuto's grades were bad. Asagiri quietly answered yes, but said they would surely get better soon if he focused on studying for his entrance exams from now on. The woman pressed on, saying she knew Yuto had been with Asagiri during the holiday, and asked if Asagiri really wanted to keep getting in their way that badly when she had dragged him away at such a critical time. Flustered and teary-eyed, Asagiri tried to explain that it had been Yuto who asked her, while the woman snapped that Asagiri had known it was such an important time for him and still dragged him around, telling her to stop already. Asagiri squeezed out the start of another protest, but the woman suddenly barked for silence and slammed the table hard, making Asagiri flinch. Standing over Asagiri with a cold glare, the woman said that if she found Yuto, Asagiri was to tell him to come back immediately. She leaned in even harder and added that she expected nothing from Asagiri, but at the very least she should be able to manage that much. As the woman turned to leave, Asagiri shakily asked where she was going, and the woman threw back that of course she was going to work. Without softening at all, the woman said she had come all that way and taken time out of her busy schedule, and it had been a complete waste of time. Left sitting there in silence, Asagiri stared blankly until her phone lit up beside her. On the screen, a message from Yuto said he had forgotten something, so he was going back to Grandma's house to get it. Reading that, Asagiri's eyes filled with tears and her face tightened as a small, choked sound escaped her. Her bag rattled as she suddenly sprang up, then bolted away from the table and ran. In the darkness of her thoughts, she admitted that she had not been loved by her parents. She recalled being told that, from the moment of her birth, she had apparently been a deep disappointment to her parents, who had wanted a baby boy to carry on the family name. Asagiri recalled that, until the birth of their long-awaited son and younger brother, Yuto, her parents had still raised her with at least some degree of affection in their own way. But once Yuto was born, she remembered everything beginning to revolve around him, and the little she received became nothing more than his leftovers, as the way she was treated steadily grew worse. She said she lived quietly in the corner of a room, almost like a shadow. Yet, Yuto was different. He would secretly hide things from their parents so he could share his snacks and other little things with her, and he always treated her kindly. Still, those secret exchanges were eventually discovered, and when their parents found out, they became furious and harshly scolded Yuto. Asagiri said she tried to protect Yuto and stood up to their parents herself. As a result, she was subjected to such brutal violence from her parents that she lost consciousness. After that terrible incident left her with severe emotional trauma, she went to live at her grandmother's house, and at the time, she had come to hate everything. Then she recalled that the very first person who ever spoke to her at the new school she transferred to was Nanami. Asagiri recalled that Nanami kept following her no matter how much she pushed her away, and although it should have been irritating at first, Nanami stayed by her side so persistently that it became almost annoying. Before she realized it, Asagiri had come to love and cherish Nanami dearly, while Nanami happily clung to her with a bright smile. She believed that, as long as she forgot about those people, she could keep living on, but now, as she walked alone down the road, she admitted that here she was. Thinking of her little brother, she murmured Yuto's name and reminded herself that he should be at their grandmother's house. Then she resolved that when she found Yuto, she had to tell him to go home. But in the next instant, she stopped herself, wondering what she was even doing, when someone called out her name and asked, "Asagiri?" A boy had found her there and, looking concerned, asked what she was doing in a place like that. Asagiri bluntly reflected that, to be honest, he was a real handful. Even so, she noted that although she would not listen to a word he said and usually looked at him with open hostility, she had suddenly told him to rely on her. And when he actually tried to rely on her the way she had told him to, sending messages asking if they could talk, whether she was busy, and even pleading that he was in trouble, she had gone completely silent, leaving him wondering what on earth was going on with her. He realized that was why. Normally, that kind of hassle would have gotten the better of him, and he probably would not have said anything. But then he called out to her, asking, "Asagiri?" Asagiri turned back in surprise, tears still clinging to her eyes. He asked what she was doing in a place like that. Rain began falling over the nearby park in heavy silence. The two of them hurried under a shelter and sat apart on a bench while the rain poured down. With sweat on his face and tension hanging in the air, he could only think that this was seriously awkward. Right after meeting Asagiri, it started to rain, so they rushed to take cover in a nearby park, and he pointed out a spot that would at least keep them out of the rain. Looking at her quiet expression, he could tell she was clearly acting strange. Sitting under the shelter with the rain still pouring outside, he hesitantly calls out to Asagiri and points out that she still is not responding to anything he says, while she answers only with heavy silence. Asagiri suddenly turns sharp-eyed and says it is about her little brother. The moment she mentions her brother, he realizes she reacted immediately, and when he starts with a cautious reply, Asagiri cuts in and demands to know why he is bringing up Yuto, snapping that it is none of his business. As the rain falls over the quiet park, he can only respond with confused surprise, saying there is something that has been on his mind. Asagiri rises at once and says that is fine, but more importantly, he needs to go to Yuto first, leaving him staring up at her in shock. He tries to stop her, warning that the rain is coming down hard, but she pushes on anyway. With sweat on her face and urgency in her voice, Asagiri insists that she has to find Yuto quickly. Wondering what on earth is happening with Asagiri, he listens as she explains that earlier that day, Yuto asked her to see him off back to his hometown, but on the way, he disappeared. She continues that she then ran into his mother, who had come looking for him, and that his mother told her to go find Yuto. Standing there in the tense silence, Asagiri says she does not expect anything from him, but she is sure he can at least manage that much. Thinking it over, he wonders if Yuto might have run off because he knew his mother was coming, then recalls that Kuris-e had mentioned something about his mother earlier. Asagiri says that if his mother lives apart from the rest of the family, that could be connected, and adds that this is exactly why she has to protect him as he starts to ask if she means. She finishes the thought for him and asks if it was his brother who called his mother there. Asagiri stiffens in sudden alarm, clutching at her chest as the realization hits. She immediately rejects it, insisting there is no way Yuto would do something like that. He carefully pushes back, saying it still feels strange that Yuto disappeared so suddenly, only for their mother to show up right after. He goes on to remind her that during the long holiday, Yuto had left her by herself back then too. He adds that during that same time, his brother had apparently been staring at Karase the entire time, leaving Asagiri wide-eyed in shock. Under the rain-soaked shelter, she repeats in disbelief that Yuto was, but he says that while Nanami is his friend and that may be true, something about Yuto still feels off. He concludes grimly that at this rate, Karase might be in danger. Asagiri freezes with a blank stare, only managing a stunned little reaction as she tries to process what he just implied. In the shelter, she demands to know what he means and asks if he is seriously saying that Yuto is going to do something. Put on the spot and asked what grounds he has. After realizing a normal excuse will never convince Asagiri, he awkwardly says it is something he saw in a dream. Asagiri fires back in disbelief, asking what kind of dream he is even talking about and whether he thinks he is some kind of prophet, while he can tell she is not buying any of it. Watching her expression harden, he decides there is no other choice and resolves to tell her the truth, quietly steeling himself. He finally says it outright, telling Asagiri that he can see the future. She blinks in shock, a bead of sweat on her face, and can only let out a confused, breathless reaction. As she asks what he is saying, he tries to calm her and admits that he knows it is hard to believe. He insists that it is the truth, then explains that even on the day they first met, he saw a future where she was hit by a car, and that was why he stepped in. Asagiri cuts him off coldly, saying he should not mess with her because she really did try to help him. Asagiri snaps that there is no way she would be convinced by a story like that and tells him to stop making a fool of her. She abruptly turns and rushes out into the rain, and he calls after her, shouting for Asagiri to wait. Left behind, he admits to himself that her reaction is only fair since he blurted it out without thinking. Watching her run off through the downpour, he reflects that anyone told they can know the future would naturally refuse to believe it, and he wonders what he is supposed to do now in this rain. Then he realizes that she just mentioned the rain, and he quietly repeats the word to himself. A thought suddenly hits him. Looking out at the heavy downpour, he remembers that in that dream too, it had been raining like this. His eyes widen as he realizes it might be today, and he blurts out in alarm, asking if this is really the day. He quickly grabs his phone, reasoning that if so, that would explain why Asagiri's brother is not around, and that Karase should be on her way home from school by now. When the call connects, he hears her answer, asking Ito-kun what is wrong, and he relaxes in relief, thinking that thank goodness she is safe. On the phone, Karase says she is still at school because it started raining just as she was about to head home, and when he tells her to wait there until he gets to her, she hesitates and says, okay, but... Hearing that, he realizes this is not some dreamlike vision of the future after all, and even as he thinks that going back to school in this rain sounds awful, he falls silent. The next instant, he jolts into motion with sudden resolve, thinking that he has to go. Elsewhere under the pounding rain, a voice anxiously asks Grandma if it is true. Yuri stands at the entrance and asks if Yuto still has not come back yet. The older woman tells Yuri that he left with her this morning and that she has not seen him since, then notices she is soaked and asks what happened, while Yuri can only think that this cannot be true. With tears and sweat on her face, Yuri wonders if it could really be happening, as the warning comes back to her that at this rate, Karase might be in danger. Refusing to accept it, Yuri declares that it is impossible, then apologizes and says she has to go right now as she rushes back out. As she bolts into the rain, someone calls after her asking Yuri-chan to wait and at least take an umbrella, while the narration trails into the thought of why. Running through the street in the downpour, Yuri insists to herself that Yuto is a kind boy who has always helped her, and there is no way he would ever do anything to Nanami. Through the rain, a woman notices her and calls out, asking if she is Yuri-chan. Yuri stops and faces the woman standing under an umbrella in the downpour. Caught off guard and still soaked, Yuri realizes who it is and murmurs that she is. The woman gently confirms that she is the manager from the cafe. As the rain pours over the neighborhood, she remarks that it suddenly started coming down out of nowhere. Inside, the manager tells Yuri that the shop is closed today, so she should not worry about that, while Yuri quietly thanks her and dries herself off with a towel. The manager then asks if she has ever told her name before, and when Yuri apologetically says she has lived in this town for a long time, the woman listens. The manager explains that she is an old acquaintance of Yuri's grandmother, and that she also knows a little about the circumstances of why Yuri moved here. Startled, Yuri lets out a small sound as the manager adds that she only learned Yuri's name recently. The manager reveals that it was because that child brought Yuri to the shop, calling her his first friend. Yuri, still wrapped in a towel, quietly repeats that she was his first friend, then wonders if that is really true. The manager gently asks whether something happened between the two of them, and Yuri hurriedly explains that no, it is just that they happened to run into each other earlier. Looking upset, Yuri says he said hurtful things about her brother even though he does not know anything about her family. She adds that he just kept saying whatever he wanted, while the manager listens nearby. The manager apologizes lightly and says she can tell that child is not very good at expressing himself. Speaking as someone who knows that boy's circumstances, the manager explains that he did not mean any harm and may simply have wanted to be on Yuri's side, leaving the other girl startled. She goes on to say that, after all, Yuri and he have similar circumstances. Back in the cafe, the manager reveals that the reason is that child was abandoned by his parents too. Yuri stares ahead in shock as the narration raises the question of what Itu's past really is, and the scene promises to be continued. Outside in the rain, a flustered girl calls out to Ito-kun, asking what is wrong and where his umbrella is. Caught off guard in the rain, Itu awkwardly scratches his head and admits that he did not bring his umbrella. When the girl asks why he came back then, he explains that he needed something from Kurase. She panics and blurts out a nervous denial, while Itu hurriedly asks whether it was something urgent or if he did something wrong. As the rain falls around them, she says that is not it, then asks why he could not have just waited for a phone call if he only came back on his own. Gathering her courage, she admits that she wanted to walk home with Kurase. The confession leaves her blushing hard, clutching her hand near her chest as she lets out a stunned little sound. Startled, Itu repeats her words about walking home together in a strange way, and she quickly flusters that she did not mean it like that. Off to the side in the pouring rain, a hooded figure stands silently, saying nothing. The scene shifts back to the cafe as Yuri, facing the manager across the room, asks what she means. The manager calmly explains that the boy was abandoned by his parents, and Yuri repeats the revelation in shock. The manager says that for someone who had been used and worn down until he was worth nothing, that description was probably the most accurate. She goes on to explain that the boy's parents had always been hopeless people who barely worked, did nothing around the house, and made him handle everything himself. She adds that it seems he had even been working part-time since middle school. Still seated and shaken, Yuri asks why that guy is here then, and the manager faces her as the conversation continues. The manager explains that he was hospitalized until not that long ago. She says he got caught up in a crime his parents were involved in and ended up in an accident, and by then there was no one left to take him in. As Yuri looks stunned, the manager says that he ended up here through various connections and acquaintances. The story shifts to the outdoor school trip, where Itu asks what someone should do when they are in trouble themselves, while Yuri recalls feeling that he was similar to her. Back in that memory, Itu answers that he would do nothing, or rather, that he does not even know what he should do. Hearing that, Yuri realizes it was not just her imagination after all. Looking down, Yuri says she does not believe that story about being able to see the future either, and insists that still has nothing to do with Yuto's story. Then she trails off, stopping at a hesitant but. She recalls being told that Kurase had been saved just as she was drowning, and that he had also appeared right when she was hurt. The thought continues that even if those were coincidences, it still feels like too much to ignore. In her memory, Itu says that when he first met her, he saw a future where she got hit by a car. As hands clutch at fabric, it hits her that Itu-kun might have been the one who saved her from that car. Yuri looks up with tears in her eyes, visibly shaken by the realization. Back in the cafe, Yuri abruptly apologizes and says she really should get going now, while the manager watches her quietly. As Yuri stands with her bag, the manager stops her and tells her to take this with her. It is an umbrella, and the manager adds that Yuri does not need to return it. Holding the umbrella the manager gave her, Yuri hesitates and asks if that is really okay. The manager tells her not to worry, saying it is fine since it belongs to that boy anyway, while Yuri listens with a tense, uncertain look. As Yuri stares ahead in surprise, the manager adds that if it bothers her, she can just return it to him directly. With the door sliding open to the sound of the rain outside, Yuri answers with a quick okay and heads out. Stepping into the downpour, she thinks that she does not believe any of that talk about being able to see the future. But under the umbrella in the rain, she decides that is exactly why she has to find Yuto. Walking through the wet street with her bag at her side, Yuri resolves to tell him herself. Then from behind, a voice suddenly declares that everything he said was wrong, and Yuri stiffens mid-step. She turns with wide eyes, caught off guard, and lets out a startled sound. In the rain stands a hooded figure with his face shadowed, calling out to you. Under the umbrella in the pouring rain, Yuri faces the hooded figure and demands to know where he was, adding that this outfit on top of it only makes the whole scene even more suspicious. The hooded boy answers hesitantly that he was at his sister's school. He explains that he was curious about what kind of school it was, and says that if it seemed like a good one, he figured he would take the entrance exam there next year. Lowering his gaze beneath the hood as rain runs down around him, he quietly says he sees. Yuri turns tense, wanting to believe what Yuto said, but still unable to shake her doubts. The hooded boy notices her silence and calls her sis, as if checking her reaction. Then he lifts his face slightly, and, with a sharp, unreadable look, asks if something is wrong. Yuri wavers under the umbrella, wondering what she should do, then calls him Yuto and asks if that is really all there is to it. Gripping the umbrella handle tightly, she presses further and asks whether that Yuto actually went to see Nanami. As the rain falls between them, she recalls that before they all hung out together that day, he had been watching Nanami behind her back and admits that Yuto is scary. Standing under her umbrella in the pouring rain, Yuri goes rigid as he bitterly realizes she has already figured everything out, and all he can manage is a frustrated groan. He thinks back on how, even after going all the way to the school, Nanami never gave him a chance to catch her alone, and he resentfully calls it so annoying. In a cold, cutting tone, he says it must be nice for his sister, since those people abandoned her long ago. Startled, Yuri grips her umbrella and repeats herself, asking who he means by those people. With rain pouring over the empty school buildings between their words, she hesitantly asks whether he means their mother and the others, and whether something happened. From the shadows of his hood, he tells her she is seriously such an idiot, saying that just because he was a little nice to her once, she went and trusted him completely. As he pulls at the collar of his rain-soaked hood, he says this is all his sister's fault. Yuri blurts out his name in disbelief and asks what he is even talking about, while he goes on about how she is putting him through something awful. He says that while his sister is out there carefree and having a good time with her friends, he is the one left with this. Yuri's eyes widen in shock, and with a shaken look she wonders how she could have failed to notice that. Through the image of shattered glass and his sister beyond it, he says he had been thinking of telling her something important, but he held it back because it made him so angry. Lowering his head beneath the hood, he says that at this point, there is only one thing left. As his hand grips the handle of a large knife, he declares that he might as well take his sister down himself. Yuri freezes under her umbrella with a shocked gasp, and then a quiet, trembling refusal escapes her. With a hard, resentful look, he turns away and coldly tells his sister goodbye. Yuri recoils with a panicked cry, her face tightening as the danger finally becomes real. In the pouring rain, a young man suddenly rushes in from the side and grabs the hooded boy's wrist before he can move, while Yuri stares in stunned silence. With rain running down his face and anger flashing in his eyes, the newcomer demands to know what he thinks he is doing. The knife slips from the hooded boy's hand and falls away with a clatter, and from above, the three of them stand frozen in the rain as Yuri can only let out a breathless sound. Still holding back his anger, the young man glares at him and asks why he is here. Walking with the girl through the downpour, he notes that the rain still is not stopping, and she agrees that it really does not seem like it will. As they move on, he thinks that if the rain would just stop, he could finally relax, and when the idea of giving up and making a run for it comes up, he dismisses it as a bit too reckless. Sweat on his face despite the weather, he admits to himself that he does not even know whether that dream was really a foresight dream to begin with. Then, through the curtain of rain, a hooded figure appears ahead, and he wonders if this is the usual kind of vision after all. Seeing the hooded person standing there in the storm, he realizes with alarm that the dream really was a vision of the future. As the hooded face comes into view, he recognizes the man as Asagiri's brother, and his thoughts jump to the terrifying possibility that the one who collapsed was not who he first assumed. In his mind flashes the image of Asagiri lying crumpled on the ground in the rain, motionless and exposed to the storm. He jerks in shock and blurts out Asagiri's name, his eyes going wide as the realization hits him. While the girl looks up at him in confusion and calls out to Ito-kun, he panics internally, asking why Asagiri would be the one targeted instead of Kurase. From behind, the two stand in the rain as he wonders whether the future has changed, then immediately decides that there is something even more important to deal with right now. In the pouring rain, he suddenly apologizes to Kurase and says something urgent has come up, realizing that if this keeps going, Asagiri will be in danger. He tells her that once the rain stops, she should go on ahead without him, and while Karase stares in shock and calls out to Itukun, he remembers that the place from the vision was the same park they had just been at. He thinks that he somehow made it in time, but now he has to decide whether to bring up the foresight dream, worried that Asagiri will just get angry again. As he grabs the hooded boy, the other boy jerks in surprise and angrily tells him to let go. The hooded boy glares back, visibly rattled, and demands to know what his problem is. Sweating and out of breath, he fires back and asks what the boy is even doing here. The girl steps in and says that Asagiri is his sister, is she not? At that, the hooded boy's tense expression shifts as he reacts to the name Yuto. A woman holding an umbrella suddenly appears in the rain and asks what the two of them are doing. Stunned, Yuto blurts out and asks why their mom is here, while she scolds him and asks what he thinks he is doing, then adds that he could have at least tracked Yuto down and called her. Standing in the rain with his mother and the others watching, Yuto quietly admits that he was the one who called her. From under his hood, he says he wanted to show her something. Asagiri stares in shock while Yuto reveals that he stabbed his sister. Their mother stands frozen under her umbrella as he says he wanted to see everything fall apart. In a downpour, she can only stare ahead and ask Yuto what on earth he is saying. Then her expression hardens, and she snaps that this is exactly what comes from hanging around that girl, calling her nothing but a bad influence. Yuto lowers his face and bitterly asks what he is supposed to do if it affects his entrance exams. He suddenly explodes, shouting that this is exactly what he hates. As his mother falters and calls his name, Yuto yells that every time she opens her mouth, it is always about entrance exams or becoming a doctor someday, and that all that excessive pressure is crushing him. With rain running down her face, she argues back that his grades are the kind counted from the bottom and tells him to face reality for once. Under the pouring rain, Yuto's mother stands beneath her umbrella in grim silence, staring at the hooded boy, Asagiri, and the others without saying a word. Then she suddenly turns on Asagiri and demands to know what she put into Yuto's head, leaving the girl startled as she can only repeat in confusion that she did it. The mother insists the answer should be obvious, declaring that Yuto is not the kind of kid who would ever say things like this. Asagiri lowers her face, shaken, while the mother coldly says she never should have let her and Yuto get close, and adds that he should not have become a failure like her. Before it can go further, a voice cuts in and orders her to stop, and the young man beside Asagiri steps forward, shouting for her to stop already. From under his hood, Yuto says she was not even listening to him and reminds her that he just said this is her fault right now. The other boy backs him up, angrily saying that after listening to her this whole time, all he has heard are excuses, and asks whether there is not something else she should be saying. In the rain, Yuto presses the point and asks if both of them are her children or not. His mother finally responds that if a little brother pulls a knife on his own sister, that is obviously something serious, and says she should be worried about that first. She then snaps back at the speaker, demanding to know who he even is, saying an outsider has no business butting into family matters, while he begins to answer that it is true he is an outsider, but in the rain, the boy says that even so, he is still Yuri-san's classmate, and after hearing what was just said, he cannot stay out of it. A girl with long dark hair speaks up, clutching her bag as she says she can tell Yuri-san is hurting. With tears at the edge of her eyes, she says that is why she cannot just leave it alone. Yuto's mother lets out a weary sigh and says this is pointless and that they should go, but a boy quickly stops her and tells her to wait as he pulls out his phone. Holding up the phone, he says he actually filmed the moment when Yuto tried to stab Yuri-san, while someone immediately protests that is a lie. Facing the hooded Yuto under her umbrella, the mother says she stopped him in time, so it only counts as an attempt. The phone fills the frame as she coldly adds that even if this spreads online, Yuto-kun will not have any entrance exams to worry about by then. She then demands to know what he thinks he is doing and orders him to delete it right now, and he calmly answers that he understands. The mother stiffens in surprise when he adds that this will be an exchange. Frowning beneath the umbrella, she hears his condition, that she apologized to Yuri-san. In the pouring rain, the mother flatly asks why she would ever do that, then says that if he insists, she will spread the recording around instead. After a beat, she lowers her gaze and simply agrees. Facing Yuri, she admits she was wrong and apologizes to her directly. Still under the umbrella, she asks if that settles things now, then adds one more point. Looking straight ahead from beneath his hood, Yuto quietly asks her to properly listen to his side later as well. Yuri, tense and shaken, asks if this is enough, her fingers tightening near her chest as her voice trails off. Yuto calls out to his mom. With her back turned, Yuri thanks her for apologizing, but says she still cannot forgive what she and his father have done to her. Eyes closed and voice restrained, Yuri asks them not to get involved with her anymore. Then she includes Yuto too, telling him not to get involved with her anymore either. His mother quietly says okay, then tells Yuto there is no need to explain because she had already planned to leave, and she heads off. Under the umbrella beside the car, Yuto's mother leaves, while Yuri and Yuto remain standing together in the now calmer street. Yuto asks if ending it like that was really okay, and Yuri answers that it was, adding that this is something she had wanted to say for a long time. With her back turned, Yuri lets out a relieved breath and says, "Thank goodness," noticing that the rain seems to have stopped. After a pause, Yuri says there is something more important and asks why Yuto came here in the first place, wondering if it was one of his future visions again. She then asks if he came because he thought she was similar to him and that it bothered him, before saying that either way he really is far too good a person. Yuri adds that the manager told her a lot about him, and even mentions Ayako-san as part of it. Looking a little awkward, Yuto admits that, well, that is true. But Yuri firmly says that even if Asagiri and she might have something in common, that is not the reason she came. Then she reveals the real reason, saying that she once had a little sister. Yuri says her little sister was Ito Mizuki, 4 years younger than her, a frail girl she looked after in place of their irresponsible parents. She explains that their parents were unemployed good-for-nothings who forced everything onto her, dumping all the housework and money-making on her, and if she ever talked back, they would hit her. More than anything, she says that if it had only been her, she could have run away, but she could not leave her sickly little sister behind. Mizuki would smile and say that Big Brother could do anything and always saved her when she was in trouble, just like a hero. Yuri says that was the kind of thing Mizuki used to say, and because of her, he felt he could not simply run away for Mizuki's sake either. Then one day, their parents took on a theft job and told him to carry it out. Mizuki realized what was happening and desperately tried to stop it, but knowing their parents would never listen, Mizuki got into the same car because she wanted to stay with him, at the very least. In the end, the police caught on and closed in on the car. And while they were trying to escape, they got into an accident, leaving the car wrecked and smoking in the middle of the road. Yuri says that after the crash, he was hospitalized with serious injuries. He continues that his sister did not survive, as he stands at her hospital bedside staring at the covered bed. After a pause, he says that his parents are still alive, but that is... He explains that a lot happened after that, and now he lives with Ayako-san. Yuri says that was when it all started, and Asagiri listens in stunned silence. Looking down, he reveals that from then on, he became able to see the future. He adds that it is not the kind of thing people would normally believe, and it is not as if he can see the future whenever he wants, either, while Asagiri quietly asks if that means it is really true. In the rain-soaked memory, Yuri says what he can see is actually pretty limited, so this time he thought Karase was the one being targeted, not her. He admits that he did not even know whether he had really needed to save her in the first place. With a faint, emotional smile, Yuri says that this power is his connection to Mizuki, so... Looking away, Yuri says that maybe what Mizuki left with him, or entrusted to him, was something like saving someone like a hero. Hearing that, Asagiri softly says, "So then." Yuri realizes she means she was saved by that same power of his again, and she repeats the word again in surprise. Asagiri recalls their first meeting and asks if back then too he had been seeing the future, and Yuri admits that, yeah, he had. After a brief pause outside, Asagiri says she believes all of it, his whole story, leaving Yuri caught off guard. She smiles warmly, her long hair flowing, and thanks him for saving her. That sudden gratitude leaves Yuri frozen, wide-eyed and blushing. As they stand facing each other, Asagiri adds that she still is not forgiving him for that molesting-ish thing he pulled, and Yuri flusters out that it had been an unavoidable accident, while he admits in narration that he does not know whether this foresight was really entrusted to him by Mizuki at all. With an awkward, embarrassed smile, Yuri says he does not even know if this is a power meant for saving people, and Asagiri lets out a light laugh. Smiling with her eyes closed, Asagiri jokes that even so, if this power let him save Asagiri, then that is enough. Yuri gives a small, gentle smile, and as the moment settles between them, it feels like, for now, that answer alone is enough for him.